me if you want me to.
Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
This is it. Don't get scared.
Happy New Year! Welcome to 2026. The future is now. And thank you so much for joining me for a brand new live show. There's so much to talk about. And we have to talk about that series finale of Stranger Things. Because there's a lot of ups, there's a lot of downs, a lot of what have yous. But I will say this. Spoilers. That ending epilogue saved this entire season of Stranger Things for me. And I can overlook some of the clunkiness, some of the writing throughout the past 2 volumes of Stranger Things, which I have reviewed. So if you want to watch those 2 previous reviews where I talk for 20 minutes or 30 minutes at a time about each of those volumes, you can check out the older live shows. But going into this, I was sort of on the edge of my seat because I didn't want this season finale to let me down. I was hoping that it would be somewhat fulfilling. I just didn't want to see another Game of Thrones 8. That's all I'm saying. There's nothing worse than being dedicated to a series. It's part of your life for years. You look forward to it once a week. And in the case of Stranger Things, you can binge watch each season. But my point is, it becomes part of you. And in the best ways possible. And you connect to it. And for me, when it comes to Stranger Things, it's one of those series that when it first came out in 2016, and by the way, 9 years, man, where has the time went? And the fact that they released this on New Year's Eve, it really sort of, in my opinion, added to the nostalgia factor of the series, because it's the end of a year. You start a whole new journey, a whole new year where the possibilities are unlimited. And that's exactly sort of how they left off with Stranger Things, or at least the season finale. And I know over the course of this season, there's been a lot of critiques and criticisms, and myself included, I've had many. There's been some forced writing. There's a few scenes where they delve a little too into it, and it was a bit too heavy-handed. And you're like, what are we doing here? I don't know. Can we go save the world or something? Yes, I'm talking about Will being gay. We all knew it was coming for 3 seasons. I'm glad he got it out. But, you know, there was a lot of emphasis on it. And sometimes when the hype is so heightened, well, you can't help but be a little bit let down or somewhat underwhelmed by the execution. And I do have some complaints and I do have some criticisms with this final episode of Stranger Things. But once again, that epilogue, I think, solidified the fact that this is still one of my favorite series to ever be created, even with some of its shortcomings, because nothing's perfect. But it's about the journey, and most importantly, it's about the destination. And for me, the destination in this season finale, and please share your thoughts down below. What did you think about this? And we will dive into those questions momentarily after I get done giving you my diatribe of a review and my thoughts and my feelings, and most importantly, some of my feels. And I do have some feels when it came to this epilogue. I truly do think it solidified this as a worthy season of Stranger Things. And I will say, I feel like that destination was worth the journey we got to. Even if there were some twists and turns along the way we didn't all love, okay? So we're going to get to it, I assure you. We're going to get there. We're going to get to the end of this because there's a lot to cover. But first, let's back up. Let's back way up. And let me start with this. Check out my awesome The Squawk sweater. Now, my wife actually made this. She literally made this with a Cricut. Yeah, she handmade this. I think it's perfection. It makes me feel like Lucas. And I promised her if she was ever in a induced coma by a majestic tormentor who kidnaps children, I would sit beside her every day at her bedside, listening to Kate Bush running up that hill, wearing the sweater, much like Lucas does in the series finale. Okay, so let's dive into my thoughts on this. Now, objectively, this season was a bit flawed. I think some of the writing was clunky. I think there was a few directions where they put too much emphasis in the wrong places. And it does feel like it might have been slightly rushed. And it feels like there were some scenes left somewhere on an editing room floor, or maybe they just never wrote them into the screenplay. I'm not quite sure. But overall, you have to understand this. When it comes to the final season of any TV series, they have to answer all of the questions and all of the mystique that those previous seasons had built up to. And I've always said this, and I'll continue to say it. Sometimes the journey is always more fun than the destination. And when it comes to some of my favorite movies of all time, even when I go back and rewatch those, I find myself watching the first 2/3 of the movie. And by the third act, where the conclusion's about to hit, I sometimes turn the movie off. Not because I don't like it, or I don't love it, or I don't find it moving, but I'm one of those dudes who enjoy the journey. And for me, maybe when I think about it deep down inside, and maybe I need to be in a therapist's office to really figure this out, sometimes I don't want to get to the destination because that journey is so much fun. And we're going to talk all about the epilogue of this, but let's just keep going. I don't want to cry. I'm not a pussy, okay? I'm tough. But yet, inside, I'm tender. Okay, so a few things we have to cover first is some of the theories that people were speculating about for the last 2 weeks on the internet didn't even come close to happening. Not even a smidge of it. And maybe people overestimated the writing of this, or maybe people were thinking too hard into what should happen. For example, people were expecting these complex Inception, a story on top of a story, all these different layers. Maybe Vecna was tricking everyone with an illusion in Volume 2, and everything that we were seeing, we were being misguided. Not only the characters, but the audience. Yeah, none of that happened. None of that happened. Everyone was picking apart every screen grab of every second of the runtime of Volume 2. That lever's a different color. Oh, look at the sky over there. Look at that tree. Look at that tree looking at me. I don't know. But 90% of that shit didn't happen. Now, I will say this. I'm going to pat myself on the back because that feels really good and I like it. But I will say this. In our last live show, I did have a few theories about what would happen this season. And technically speaking, those theories did actually come true. So I feel really good about that. Now, the way that they came about wasn't quite in the order of process as I was expecting them to. For example, and we will get here, but I assumed that 8 would do some kind of illusion to help Elle out. Now, that's a bit ambiguous, and that's going to be open to interpretation, but I will get there, I promise you. A few other things people assumed would happen was 8 would turn completely evil. Maybe she was working for Vecna. Maybe she was a spy. Maybe Will was still a spy. Yeah, those things didn't happen either. And I will say this. Another thing that didn't happen was there was no time travel aspect to this final season. Nah, it was pretty straightforward when you think about it. But you have to ask yourself this. Had they went over the top with all of these complex ideas that might have been a bit too convoluted, and maybe they didn't have enough time to explore all of these things, sometimes just being straightforward is the best way to tell a story. Because we've already dealt with all the twists and the turns. And now it's time for that conclusion. And it's time to give fans what they want. Let's back up. Maybe not what you wanted, but maybe what you needed. So anyway, there's definitely some character stakes throughout this final episode. At one point, we think Steve is about to die because that's the biggest fan theory from everyone. Steve's going to die, and if he dies, we riot. And I'm one of those dudes who fell in love with Steve over the years, and I'm not ashamed to say that. But Steve doesn't die. They do tease it, a little heavy-handed so, where it cuts to black. But then all of a sudden, Jonathan grabs Steve's hand. And I liked that bromance where they embraced each other. I thought that was a nice feel-good moment. And I quite enjoyed it. As far as that radio tower scene where they climb up the tower into the abyss, the point where they enter the abyss underneath the radio tower, I was thinking to myself, why didn't anyone bring a stepladder or maybe a rope or something? That just looks so utterly dangerous. And the other question is, like, how did they all get down from there and land on the radio tower? Because that entrance point to the abyss was a little off center from the tower. So, I don't know. That looked a bit sketchy to me. The other point about the radio tower, the other scene we have to talk about was the scene where Mike is having a follow-up conversation with Will. And I thought that was very needed. And I like that Mike finally is no longer oblivious like his father, Ted. I like that he sort of came around and he said, okay, hey, I'm sorry I missed all the signs. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. And then at one point, Will's like, can we still be friends? And Mike's like, no. and had the scene just ended there and went to the next thing, that would have been utterly devastating, I guess, for Will. And he probably would have just jumped off the side of that radio tower. But with that epic pause, Mike comes back and says, no, we can be best friends. And I like that. All right, let's keep going here. The next thing we need to talk about, we'll just dive into the big epic showdown. I'm not going to talk about every insignificant scene that happened in this final episode. I'm going to talk about the big bullet points that I remember off the top of my head for the most part. But when it comes to that final showdown with Vecna and the Stranger Things crew, it did feel a bit quick. And there was some build up to it, which I did appreciate. I thought the L and 8 going into Vecna's mind and saving the kids, and they go hide out in the cave where they basically have to convince the kids that Vecna is a liar and a predator against children, if you will, just putting it out there. And where 8 put up that illusion, that wall where she hid the children, proving that, in fact, Vecna Henry is just a bad dude. But I liked the sequence where Henry was chasing the children through the cave. He was desperate. He was no longer in control. His plan was falling apart. And I really appreciated that scene because if you really want to think about it, and it will factor into my next few points I'm going to make in this final showdown, once Henry entered that cave, in my opinion, it was game over for Vecna. He had already lost. His strategy had already failed him. And he made himself vulnerable and he made himself weak because going back into that cave was like revisiting his childhood trauma. And once he was weakened and brought back to just being a child, I really felt it was game over for Vecna. And in my opinion, that sort of helped how quickly they defeated him in the abyss. So just putting it out there. The other thing we need to talk about here is some of the monologues between characters. At times, they do feel a little bit forced, but I felt like they were necessary, especially for some of the send-offs, because you had to give characters those final moments. And we didn't know what we were getting at the end, but when you back up and think about it, those monologues were very needed. You have the one monologue between Hopper and Elle, where he's basically pleading with her not to end her life tonight, because he knows what the game plan is. And I like that he was pleading his case, and he basically, in his own stubborn way, and I get it, it's a father's love for his child, so, logic isn't going to come into play for this, where he's like, you know what, if you don't come back, I'm not pulling the trigger. I'm not going to blow up Hawkins' lab in the Upside Down. It's not happening. I won't do it. And I liked that Elle had to convince him later on in another monologue to trust her and let her go and let her grow up. And that was a nice character arc for Hopper in a way, because that's something he needed to learn to do, is let go. Now, he didn't know she wasn't coming back. He didn't know that because he made her promise him she would. But you know what? Maybe she made the right call, because if she had continued on, well, Linda Hamilton would just keep duplicating her blood and impregnating women with Henry's DNA, and you'd keep getting a whole bunch of superpowered babies, and it would never end. And that's another point we need to talk about. Linda Hamilton's character. Somewhat pointless, I will say that. She didn't really have much to her. She was just bad for the sake of being bad. At least Dr. Brenner had a little bit of empathy where you thought to yourself, well, he sort of does care about these kids ever so slightly. He is a bit psychotic, but there's more to him. Linda Hamilton's character, just kind of blah, very blah writing. The other point I need to make, when it comes to some plot points that weren't quite explained in enough detail, or at least for me, was the entire military presence after the events that happened in the Abyss and the Upside Down. So what happened after this? It's okay. You killed 47 guys in the military, but we're going to let you go now because the portal has closed. So we'll just see you guys later, okay? Stay out of trouble, all right? See ya. Like, what happened there? I'm not quite sure. I'm sure it was explained somehow, some way. All right. But going back to that final showdown with Vecna, once Elle does give that final monologue to Hopper, and she's like, there's a shortcut. I can jump on the rocks. I can fly. And he's like, well, what if you can't do it? She's like, trust me, Dad. I can do it. And then it just cuts to the Abyss. I really felt, and maybe I'm the only one, but if you share my same sentiments, let me know down below. Did you feel like they were missing the scene where she did fly up on the rocks and into the Abyss? I thought that would have been one of the most epic moments of the entire final episode. And hear me out for a second. Imagine at that point, some epic music swells up and you see her flying across each rock in the distance, almost like a godlike superhero as Hopper looks on at his daughter going to save the day, looking like an utter badass. But we didn't get that scene. They just didn't show it. And I thought that was one of the biggest missed opportunities of this last episode. Maybe that's a nitpick, but I would have liked to have seen that. But when the kids are going to Vecna's cave, his lair, which looks very reminiscent to the castle in the Dark Crystal from 1983, or maybe it's 1982. Don't correct me if I'm wrong. I really liked when they were walking on their way there, their journey. It kind of gave me like a Lord of the Rings vibe. And I like that we finally went full D&D. You know, we've had little teases of it over the previous seasons, but this is full D&D. This campaign that they once lived in Mike's basement has come to fruition. They're in it. They're doing it. And I liked that build-up sequence. Now, would I have brought more weapons than a flare gun and a slingshot and, you know, a sharp object? Possibly, but nevertheless, I enjoyed it. But when they get there, and Vecna's lair, the upside-down spider, comes to life, I knew at some point we would get a giant kaiju spider fight. I thought, you know, that was going to happen at some point after watching the first season because you always see the mind flare off in the distance, which is a giant spider. And then in season 4, I feel like they figured out, well, we have to sort of humanize the antagonist of this story to make it more relatable. So they gave us Vecna. And I'm okay with things like that. But going back to Vecna real quick, that scene in the cave where you think you're going to get a redemption arc of Vecna, where you think maybe, just maybe, he's a flawed villain or a flawed person who just made the wrong choices unbeknownst to him, and he's stuck in this situation. Sort of like a Darth Vader-esque character. And nope, Vecna's just a bad dude. He was always a piece of shit little kid, now he's a piece of shit psycho kidnapper. So you know what? Fuck Vecna. And Joyce definitely doesn't give a shit about Vecna. Because when it comes to that final fight, and we're going to talk about Joyce in just one second, and chopping Vecna's head off like a dead tree trunk in the forest, that final spider fight between all of the kids and Elle showing up like the Incredible Hulk did in Thor Ragnarok to save the day, where she just flies into his whatever that slit was inside of him. I would be lying if I said I enjoyed it. I do think there was a little room for improvement. The one thing that I know it's a fantasy sci-fi show, and sometimes the rules of reality need to take a backseat for the suspension of disbelief, okay? But when they were like, okay, here's the plan. We're going to go to those rocks over there 4 miles away that are 500 feet up in the sky. We're going to climb to the top of those rocks in 1.5 seconds. And then we're going to throw hot things, flaming bombs and Molotov cocktails at this giant spider. And I thought to myself, but how did you get up there? I just thought maybe there was a more logical way to present that. That's all I'm saying. But as the story progressed on, the more crazy it got. And you know what? You got to be okay with things like that to a certain degree. Because keep in mind, they are fighting a giant spider in another dimension with a girl who can fly. So you know what? You just can't pick shit apart too much. You know what I'm saying? Okay. But once they finally do take down Vecna and Elle pushes him up against a giant spider tooth inside of the belly of this giant tarantula-like spider, and it impales him, and he's laying there like this, looking like Logan in the movie Logan, where he gets impaled with a tree branch. And he basically for the next 5 minutes he basically does this. And I'm like, can this guy just fucking die already? But Joyce gives the best line of the finale, and very well deserved, because this lady has went through more trauma than any mother should. The loss of her son, her boyfriend, her son was possessed. I mean, what more can you do to her? She says, no, Vecna, you fucked with the wrong family. Takes out an axe, which the same axe that she held in the first season, and just chops this goddamn dude's head off. You want to kill somebody, you want to end the villain, you chop their head off. Never go for the heart, you always go for the head. And I liked that. I liked that she chopped away. And with every new impact of that axe against Vecna's, his beef jerky neck, you got another flashback of someone who lost their life during this series over the last 9 years. And I liked that. That was great. I thought that was perfection. So, as far as killing Vecna, did it come a bit quick? Yeah, but overall, once again, I felt like by that point, Vecna's plan had failed him. His strategy was gone, and he was already weakened. And the most important thing you have to take away from this, and more or less the core of this show, is about feelings and thoughts and friendship and being honest with one another. Those are the core values of this series. No matter how you look at it, twist or turn it, the fact that the kids were no longer afraid of Vecna, it showed Vecna for what he was. And when you saw Vecna looking all weak and pathetic, well, that's because they were seeing him for what he really was. It's the same logic that they use in other horror movies like Nightmare on Elm Street. Once the kids are no longer afraid of Freddy, he no longer has the power over them. And that's sort of the same logic here. He just looks like a weak old man who's pathetic. And I liked that. So when you look at it from that perspective, I think it makes narrative sense. But now let's cut to the very end of this episode. Let's talk about that glorious 45-minute epilogue, which I feel like gave me everything I wanted and gave me some stuff I didn't know I needed. And that 45-minute epilogue, you can say what you will about the previous episodes. And maybe Volume 2 was the weakest portion of this final season. But this epilogue truly saved this season for me. And I feel like the way that it ended, and the biggest detriment you can do to a series that's very beloved and has had multiple seasons, and I'm talking to you, Game of Thrones, is you can end it in such a way to where it almost makes you not want to go back and revisit it again because you're reminded at how terrible the ending was. And yes, I will say there were some shortcomings from this final season. But man, that epilogue, it delivered for me. It gave me the closure I wanted. It gave me the closure I needed. And I think it gave the characters an appropriate send-off. And sometimes the best send-off that gives you that emotional gut punch, sometimes it's bittersweet. Sometimes it's ambiguous. But most importantly, it makes you feel something. The sacrifices led to something. And when people say on the internet, and I've been cruising the internet for the last day, just looking at what people think about this, I disagree with a lot of people saying, well, more people should have died. Absolutely not. You don't need to kill everyone in a series or season finale to justify the existence of the characters existing. That seems silly and counterintuitive to me. But what they're not noticing is the main character of the entire series is gone. Elle has vanished. And I want to talk about that sequence before we dive too deep into this epilogue. And if you guys are eating popcorn, keep eating it because I want those salty tears of yours to go into your popcorn bucket. That way it tastes even better when you consume it. But that final scene where they all come back from the abyss and they come through the portal of the Upside Down, because keep in mind, they're going to blow that shit up. And I did like the scene where Murray does just go full on Die Hard mode and just blows up that helicopter. I wish he would have said something like, "Get to the chopper." Maybe that's too corny. Just putting it out there. It is a cool 80s movie reference. But that final scene where they come back and they're listening to Prince. And yes, the big song this season was the Prince song. I believe it was Purple Rain. I feel like they played another song, but maybe it was Purple Rain. And I'm a huge fan of Prince, but I don't know if that was like the most epic send-off song of all time. You know, I think there's been, like, I liked the Metallica sequence in season 4 better than that, for example. I just think that's a much more bigger, badass song. But anyway, it was sort of a celebration. It was very short-lived, because once they go through that portal, the military is waiting on them. Now, I don't know why or what their plan was when they came back through this portal. You know, what did they think was going to happen? They had to shoot their way into it, so what did they think when they would come out of it? They didn't really have a plan there. Or maybe they just thought the ends would justify the means and somehow everyone would dance around with joy and they would be happy. I couldn't tell you. But it's at that sequence where Elle sacrifices herself, much like Jonathan Kent did in Man of Steel. He sort of just looks from a distance as the storm takes him away. Could Superman maybe save him? Absolutely. But it was the much necessary sacrifice. And that's where the ambiguous ending comes into play. Did she ultimately sacrifice herself, concluding the Upside Down, saving everyone, getting rid of the military presence in Hawkins, and letting everyone move on with their lives? Was it the necessary sacrifice? Or maybe, just maybe, there was something else at play there. And we'll talk about that maybe, just maybe. But first, let's talk about this epilogue. We start off with graduation day. And I thought Dustin's speech as the valedictorian of his graduating class was a thing of perfection. And it was a great tribute to Eddie Munson, who was sort of like a big brother to Dusty Buns. And Dustin did exactly what Eddie said he was going to do. He was going to snatch that diploma, give the principal the middle finger, and run off and start his life. And that's what Dustin did. He paid tribute to Eddie in the best way possible, and I appreciated that shit. Now, at one point, Mike hears something through the speakers. What was that? We'll get there. But then some more key moments after the graduation speech. We got a sort of a closing scene with Steve, Nancy, Jonathan, and Robin atop of the Squawk radio rooftop. And as the sun was setting, they all sort of reminisce one last time. And I really enjoyed that scene. That was such a realistic scene to me that hits me in the feels. Not as much as the very final scene, but it did hit me in the feels. Because when you break down what that scene was, where they're talking about, hey, this doesn't have to be goodbye. Why don't we all meet up once a month? Where's the best location? I don't know. I have a kooky uncle who lives in Philadelphia. We'll meet there once a month. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Well, when you back up and look at that from a realistic standpoint, and if you sort of read between the lines and some of the nuance and subtlety, and I will say, one of the biggest things missing from the previous episodes of this final season was some of that nuance and some of that subtlety. Just those little character moments. You know, the conversations at the dinner table, the conversations of characters just walking down the train tracks. Some of those things were lost in this final episode, and I will say it's because I feel like everyone had a goal and an objective. You know, we were done messing around. The time for talk is over. Let's take action. Except if you're Will, we need to have a sit-down meeting for 45 minutes with everyone there as I express my thoughts and my feelings. And that's okay. That's okay, Will. But anyway, but I felt like some of that nuance came back in this epilogue. And I think the epilogue, once again, was one of my favorite aspects of it. But that scene between all of the now adults, the thing that made it so bittersweet for me was, you know, as a guy who's in his late 30s, sometimes the idea of saying goodbye is too much. So what you do is you say, hey, this isn't goodbye. It's just until I see you next time. And when they made the promise to meet up once a month, well, I hate to say it, but I don't feel like a lot of people are going to act on that promise. I think that was a coping mechanism for them to all basically avoid saying goodbye for now and to move on with their lives. Now, maybe they do it once or twice, but eventually that month turns into 6 months, and those 6 months turn into a year, and those years turn into multiple years. It's just how life goes. Trust me. So I thought that was a very touching moment and a very realistic moment. But my favorite thing about it was, on a positive note, I really liked how Steve was teaching a little league of kids. Steve the coach, and eventually he will get his 6 little nuggets, damn it. The other thing I liked, that he was teaching sex ed. You know, that was perfection for Steve. Then you have Jonathan. He's making these art house films in New York. Nancy still doesn't know what she wants, so she's moving back to Hawkins to take a journalism job. Maybe, just maybe, there's hope between Nancy and Steve down the road. Maybe once Nancy figures out what she truly wants, maybe it was Steve all along. It just took her a long time to get there. And then you have Robin being Robin, and that's fine. But now let's talk about the send-off here. The final scene of Stranger Things. And this is what I wanted, this is what I needed, and I feel like down the road, everyone who has criticism with this or didn't love this final season will at least appreciate this, because this final scene, for me, encompassed what this show was all about. And one theory was right. And this is maybe one theory I had even going back a couple years ago. I wanted this show to end off on where it started. Now, one theory was we would get there with time travel. And I'm glad we didn't get there with time travel. But I'm glad we got there with one big circle. Character arcs, stories, ups and downs, tragedy, loss. It all started in Mike Wheeler's basement in the first episode. And it all ended in Mike Wheeler's episode, in the final episode. They went from kids to adults. And that final scene where they're playing one last game of D&D after graduation. And keep in mind, the really hot chick invited Dusty Buns to her party. So Dustin was about to finally get the girl, and Mike steps in and goes, "Nah, let's go in my basement and play D&D." But you know what? At the end of the day, that's the more important thing to do. That's what they're going to remember in 30 years when they're looking back on their childhood. But let's talk about that scene in intimate detail. And this is the scene that gave me those feels. Not going to lie, I was fighting back tears. I know, but it was genuine. It truly was. This scene reminded me of other great films, like Stand By Me. Stand By Me is about a group of kids in camaraderie having one great adventure. And then you cut to modern day, where Richard Dreyfuss is retelling the story through a novel and reminiscing and talking about how he never had friends like he did when he was 12 years old. And damn it, does anyone. And I feel like Stand By Me heavily influenced the final scene in Stranger Things. The other scene that it felt very influenced by was the final scene in Toy Story 3, where you have Andy, and he gives his toys away, and he has one final playtime with Woody, Buzz, Rex, Slinky, and Potato Head. and when he walks away and he looks back at Bonnie playing with his toys, and they're going to be enjoyed by a new generation, he reminisces, he looks at it, he remembers, but he lets go. And that's exactly what happened in this final scene. They had one last D&D campaign, and all of a sudden, they lose. But wait, there's more. There's a twist ending. Mike basically has the character of the mage. I believe that's what her character is, Elle's character. And she comes back and saves the day, and they all win. And hoorah! And I really enjoyed that. That one magical last embrace of childhood magic and nostalgia. And I felt like that was so needed and so earned. And from there, they sort of dive into the epilogue and the summary of, well, what happens next with everyone going forward? And Mike basically gives them that. He says this is where he delivers that ambiguous ending of Elle. And this stems from that conversation that he had with Hopper before graduation. I can't go to graduation. It just feels like a lie. And Hopper finally, his character arc came to full fruition where he says you have to let go. You have to move on. It's what you do. Don't do what I did. And I like to think Mike took his advice. He took his advice and he coped with it. And he gave Elle a happy ending. And what was that happy ending? Well, going to see not 3 waterfalls, but 2 waterfalls somewhere in Scotland. I couldn't tell you where it was. It looked magical and mystical, that's for sure. That's Elle's happy ending. And how did she get there? Well, 8 hadn't died yet. 8 used her power of illusion and allowed Elle to disappear. And there is just enough evidence to make this plausible. Now, if you ask me, do I think Elle's dead? Do I think she's gone? Do I think she sacrificed herself? Yeah, I do. I do. But when it comes to coping with loss, sometimes you got to tell yourself a fairy tale. If that's what makes you feel better and move on with life, then so be it. Who's to tell you that you're wrong? But backing up, before Elle did disappear into the Upside Down once it was exploded, the speakers that the military used to suppress her powers were functioning. Her nose wasn't bleeding. Maybe, just maybe, 8 was still alive, and somehow she had survived just long enough during the explosion of that building to give the power of illusion to Elle to escape. It's somewhat plausible, unlikely maybe. But I do go with the theory, I think Elle did sacrifice herself, and it was the ultimate necessary sacrifice for the show. And it was the only sacrifice she needed. It was enough gut punch, because I never once thought any of the kids were going to die. And their journey continues, but Elle came and went, but she changed everyone's life along the way. But that final sequence, where Mike is telling everyone what's going to happen next in their story, where he talks about Lucas and Max. He says, a knight and a zoomer live happily ever after. I thought that was beautiful. Because keep in mind, Lucas did stand by Max's side for 2.5 years in a coma, listening to the Kate Bush song on repeat for 2 years straight, just to find out he didn't really even need to listen to that shit. But you got to give it to Lucas, who kind of became one of my favorite characters as the series progressed on. And then he goes to Will. And Will eventually find somebody who makes him happy. And where is that? Well, Will is going to go to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to a gay bar to find a man who makes him happy. That's where we cut to. And I thought to myself, well, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in the early 1990s, isn't that where Jeffrey Dahmer lived? And didn't he prey on gay men at gay bars before he took them victim? I'm just putting it out there. But maybe Will use his sorcerer-like powers to defeat Jeffrey Dahmer. Just putting it out there, just saying it's a possibility. But I thought to myself, they could have gave Will a more majestic send-off. Like, hey, Will's going to go meet somebody, and it shows him and another dude, like, climbing to the top of a mountain or something. You know, something a little more majestic for Will. Now, he's just in a bar somewhere. But anyway, so be it. His happy ending was that. The other thing I want to talk about was Mike's ending. So what will happen to the storyteller? And Mike says, well, the storyteller will keep telling stories. And Mike became a writer, an author, where he uses his friends' experiences as inspiration for future stories. And he can't share the exact story. He has to tweak it a little bit. But basically, Mike can write fictional fantasy novels or Game of Thrones pamphlets or guides, if you will, for future generations to play their actual story. And I thought that was beautiful. I like that Mike became a writer, that he can share this story for future generations. I thought that was top notch. And it, once again, it reminded me very much so of the ending of Stand By Me. And that's one of those endings of a movie that sort of makes you look back at your life and you reminisce and you get a bit nostalgic. And maybe you're not, maybe you're younger. Maybe you're in your 20s. But I assure you, the older you get, the more this shit just hits home for you. And that's how this ending hit. But the scene, and this is the scene that made me cry like a little bitch. Okay, the tears I kept them in my eye, but I pushed them back just a little bit. That final scene where they all take their campaign journals, their notebooks that has their name on them, and put them back on the shelf one by one. And they ascend back up Mike's basement stairs. To me, that was the ultimate symbolism of letting go of your childhood and ascending into adulthood. And I just thought that was a thing of perfection. I did. I thought that was the best scene at least one of the top 10 scenes of Stranger Things. And that was fulfilling to me. And when they all put their notebooks back on that shelf and you see their names side by side, man, whew. And they all slowly go back up those stairs. And then Mike is the last one because he's the heart of the team. And he goes up those stairs. And then all of a sudden, Holly rushes down the stairs with delightful Derek, not dipshit Derek, delightful Derek. And they go down there and start playing their own game of D&D, starting a new campaign, a new adventure to carry it on. And Mike looks back and he embraces that moment. That hit for me. And once again, very Toy Story-like. But you know what? If the formula's not broke, don't change it. And I thought that was beauty. And then he goes back up the stairs, and that's pretty much the ending of Stranger Things. And I have no problems with that. I really don't. I have no problems with that being the destination, the end point. And I think, if anything, the way that they wrapped up Elle, yeah, maybe she deserved her happy ending. But, you know, I never saw a place in Hawkins, Indiana where Elle would exist. And I liked that the writing, and some of the best writing for me was this season, because they must have saved it for the final episode, because some of this shit was missing throughout the previous 7 episodes, was the ambiguousness of Elle maybe surviving. And that's the beauty of this writing, because if you want to believe it, you can. There's enough meat on the bone to buy into that happy fairy tale ending for Elle. But also, the bittersweet ending is she sacrificed herself. And they're all going to remember her. Which I also thought works as well. You know? So, ultimately, I like that they talked about faith and coping and moving on with life. So, those are my final flicking thoughts on Stranger Things, the season finale. I think this epilogue, those final 45 minutes, that was everything I needed it to be and wanted it to be. And I think that gives me the hope and the urge at some point in the future, maybe down the road in a year or two, to go back and revisit this entire franchise once again and relive it. Because I don't mind where the journey is going. So, yeah, Stranger Things. What did you guys think about this? Those are my thoughts. Sorry if I talked for 45 minutes, but I had to get that out. You know, I was ruminating all day about these thoughts, and that's all I have to say. I don't know how I remembered to say all that, but there it is. Game of Thrones had 4 amazing seasons. Stranger Things had one good, one bad season. I don't know. I think Stranger Things, for the most part, you know, the weakest season is probably half of the season of season 5. It is. But, you know, so be it. The ending justified the means. And I can live with that. The worst season of Game of Thrones is better than the best season of Gayer Things. I disagree with that. But I do want a Gayer Things t-shirt. I do. They killed off 11? Yes. I hate to... I believe they did. I believe that was a coping mechanism. Oh, and one thing I need to include was the sequence where Will is, in fact, telling them about this fairy tale ending, this theoretical ending of Elle, where he says, I still believe. And then everyone goes around the table saying, yeah, I believe too. Oh, man. That's good shit, man. It's good shit. And maybe, just maybe, you know, if you've ever experienced trauma in your life, shit like that connects to you. And I appreciated it. Okay. Whew. On a lighter note, did you watch Stranger Things at the movie theater? I did not watch Stranger Things at the movie theater, and let's just dive into the questions here. And by the way, if you guys have any questions, get those questions in now. We will talk all about Stranger Things or whatever other topics you guys want to talk about along the way. I did not watch Stranger Things in theaters. I thought about it. I contemplated it. But man, watching it at home in my underwear on my OLED TV with my popcorn and my snacks and my sodas. And I have a Govee backlight system, which basically emanates the light happening on the screen to the back wall behind the TV, which just makes it super immersive. And I'll tell you what doesn't make something immersive. That's listening to some shithead beside you in the movie theater ruining the experience. Now, I'm not saying that was going to happen. I'm just saying it's a possibility, and I did not want to deal with that. Plus, it was New Year's Eve. I wanted to be at home. Yeah, Barb. You know what? Who cares? Let's move on. What decade do you think the spinoff will take place in? Well, if it were up to me, I think the logical point of the spinoff taking place would definitely be in the 1990s, because I think that's a whole nother air of nostalgia that deserves some screen time. I feel like we can take a break on some of the 80s stuff, but I think the 90s will be the next big decade that makes a resurgence in cinema. And for me, ultimately I am a 90s kid. I was born in 1987, which is the same year Over the Top came out, just putting it out there, and Predator. But for me, the 90s were my childhood. And if they make any spin-offs of Stranger Things, I think the 1990s is the logical place to put that. And there's so much you can still do in the 1990s. And maybe, just maybe, and I don't want to bastardize the franchise too much, but if in a couple years you can have some other characters show back up in the 1990s. And here's why the 1990s would make so much sense. Some of these characters, maybe they have a cameo, maybe they play a small role in a Stranger Things spinoff. I don't know. This is just hypothetically speaking. But you could have someone like Dustin show back up in the 1990s. And it would be age appropriate because we left off in 1989. So if we cut to like 1993 or something, you can have Dustin, who's a few years older, playing himself, and it would be age appropriate to the time period that it takes place in. Or at least that's my logic. Yeah, I think early 90s would be a good starting point. All right, we had a few questions here earlier. Let me get to those. And by the way, guys, thank you so much for the questions. We got one here from Patrice Chaswick. How's it going, Patrice? And thanks so much for the question, man. And you get a magical party popper. 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year to you and your wife, Patrice. Here it goes, man. And thank you for the generous question. It does mean a lot. My wife and I watched Stranger Things last night, and it's a mixed bag of glory. Props to the big sit-down, big TV event, since it's probably the biggest sit-down TV event since Game of Thrones, which I do agree with you. It did feel like an event. Lots I loved. The epilogues, my favorite song of all time, Purple Rain, Joyce with the axe, but was still unfocused overall. Yeah, it was a little bit clunky, I will say that. I think some of the nuance got lost to get to some of the major plot points. But really, they kind of gave you more or less what you thought you were going to get. And my thing is, they didn't twist it. They didn't turn it. They didn't make it convoluted. They sort of gave you maybe the expected ending. But you know what? Every good fantasy movie sort of ends the same way, doesn't it? The heroes go to a far-off land to defeat the bad guy. There's always a sacrifice, and most people live happily ever after, and there's a little bit of bittersweetness to it. And if you break it down from that standpoint, I think it delivered. And the other thing is, had they went a different direction, maybe they'd try something different. I feel like the safe route was maybe the better route. And that's the thing that's the other thing I wanted to say about this final season. And this is my tweet. Let me share my tweet. I'll just share it here. Oh, hang on. Where is it? Come on. There we go. Okay. This is the tweet I shared immediately after watching the series finale. I said this. I said, Stranger Things 5 finale was safe in some parts, bittersweet in others, but the final epilogue saved the entire season and provided the closure I wanted and didn't know I needed. And that's how I feel about it. Ultimately, that's how I feel about it. That epilogue saved this entire season. All right, let's go to the. Oh, here's the other thing I shared earlier on X. Was this right here? This came to me. I was thinking about this as soon as I watched it last night. I was like, that scene reminds me of something. And it definitely was very much like Andy from Toy Story. Mike became Andy from Toy Story. He's even wearing the same shirt. So, I definitely, I want the Duffer Brothers to admit that they were inspired by Toy Story 3. That's all I want. There's nothing wrong with it. I just need you to admit it. One last playtime. There's nothing wrong with that. But anyway, back to your question, Patrice. Here we go. Lots I loved, but the epilogues, my favorite song of all time was Purple Rain. Yeah, you know what? I like me some Prince. I thought the Purple Rain song as sort of like an act of celebration at the end a little bit, like that bittersweet moment that they all had to enjoy each other in the back of that truck for like what seemed 2 minutes. It was good. I enjoyed it. I like Prince. I most enjoy Prince when he is in the background music of a Batman movie. All right, let's go to the next one here. And thanks for the question, man. The next one comes from Kyle45667, who says, "You got good takes, John. Thanks for keeping it real." Well, thank you, man. Thanks, Kyle. I try. You know what it is? I look at things objectively speaking while still giving my subjective, self-aware thoughts. That's what I like to do. I will always admit when I'm saying something very subjective, but I'm aware that it's subjective, which still makes it somewhat objective. Does that make any sense? I think that's how you should approach film criticism. That's just my thought. Maybe sometimes I come across like an asshole. Maybe sometimes I come across, a bit negative. But man, if something's good, it makes me feel a certain way, I will praise it to the rooftops. Okay. But thanks for that, man. All right, the next one comes from Christmas Hound 08. And by the way, I only have like 9 more party poppers tonight. I'm so sorry. Please forgive my sins against humanity. I ran out of them on the last live show, but I still have like 10 left. So thank you so much for the question, Kyle. That party popper, what a dud. You're going to get your party popper, man. You're going to get it. That's your party popper. All right. Let me get that off the screen there. There you go. All right. Let's go to the next one here. And the next one comes from Christmas Hound 08, who says, "Hey, John, nostalgia was a huge part of what makes Stranger Things so watchable. The 80s and 90s were the best. What sick bastard would be nostalgic for the 2020s? That's a great point. What is culture now? What is it? I think for culture, you need unity. And there's not very much unity now. I mean, what do we have? What does everyone have in common? Social media? Here's this disingenuous short post about nothingness that you won't remember in 3.2 milliseconds after that dopamine hit fades away. But yeah, man, if I could exist in any time period as an adult, it probably would have been like the 80s or the 90s. I really feel like it was like the last camaraderie hoorah that had like a tone and a style. And I'll tell you this, as I was thinking about Stranger Things today, and when I do live streams, I do take like a handful of notes. Like tonight, I basically had everything I talked about for 45 minutes was the equivalent of, let's see here, 12 bullet points. That's what I went off of. 12 bullet points. But I was listening to the Stranger Things soundtrack today, and more importantly, there was this remix song that I listened to, which just is sort of like an orchestra remix of the kids theme from Stranger Things. It's sort of like the last song that played at the end of the final episode that we watched, and it goes something like this, and it sounds awesome. I'll play just a few minutes for you guys, but man, it hits me in the feels. It really does. Here, let me play it here for you guys. I'll just show you what it is on YouTube. If you guys want to find it here. Here it is. Let me get to the good part. Whew. I don't know what it is about that, man. It gives me that nostalgia. That makes me think about my entire life. So, I love it. I love it. All right, let's keep going here. The next one comes from... let's scroll up here. Sorry. All right, give me 2 seconds. All right, the next one comes from Skylar Wheelock. How's it going, Skylar? And by the way, Christmas Hound, thanks for the question, man. I feel like Nancy shooting Vecna right in the fucking face. All right, the next one comes from Skylar Wheelock, and he says... why did some viewers expect Stranger Things to evolve into a high body count, downer ending like Game of Thrones when the show consistently operated on Spielberg-era adventure and logic? Yeah, that's the thing I wanted to say, and I'm glad you brought that up, because now it's time to talk shit about everyone who doesn't comprehend what Stranger Things is. Now, if you're one of those people, let me correct you for your wrongdoings and your misguided logic and ideology. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, here we go. And by the way, I'm not trying to be... I'm just some dude, okay? But... I feel like what people wanted to see were these same critics people who had never watched the show and didn't understand what the expectation should be. Yeah, it's not the Red Wedding from Game of Thrones, okay? It's not that. It's about optimism and friendship and unity. And you can make fun of those themes all you want. And sometimes, yeah, they did get a little too heavy-handed at times. I get that. But that's ultimately what the show was always about. Now, over the seasons, it got a bit more bombastic with every new season and a bit more over the top. But are we forgetting that in season 3, they sang the never-ending story to save the day? And now you want to see everyone just murdered by Vecna? You think that would have been a fulfilling ending? You think people would have liked that? No, that would have been the detriment of this entire show, this franchise. That would have undone everything. Everyone's sacrifice and all the ups and downs that got us to this point over the last 9 years would have been completely undone by those events. Don't you remember when Glenn died in The Walking Dead? The viewership dropped 92% the nenext season. There's a reason for those things. Now, I understand that was in the source material. That's not the point. That's not the point. Okay, Negan, you son of a bitch. Ooh-wee, Rick, I got a big old baseball bat. I'm going to crush your friend's skull with it. Carl, we got to eat pudding. But anyway, my point is, I don't know what people truly expected, because when I read some of the complaints on the internet, they're never backed up or followed by constructive criticism of what should have happened. And I'm just like, well, what's your point here? What do you want? So anyway, yeah, I get it, man. I get it. Now we can talk shit about the clunkiness of the season all you want, but I will not talk shit about that epilogue. All right, the next one comes from Kyle45667 once again, who says, I wanted to see Steve go down fighting 3 Demogorgons with a bat and sacrifice himself. You know, I once again, I don't think any of the core characters necessarily needed to die except for Elle. And I think that was the only sacrifice you needed. And anything else, had you killed off more than one character, the other character who dies beside Elle, who was the main character, would have been less than. It's like, okay, well, who do we have sympathy for? Who do we mourn? And you got to pick and choose. And I think that's why each season only gave you one of those characters. Now, no one gave a shit about Barb. Let's be honest with ourselves first and foremost. But I think Elle was the logical choice. I mean, they took the title character away, like the main character away. What more did you want? Now, they were very clever with making it ambiguous to some degree, and I thought that was brilliant. But Elle, for me, is gone. And that's the bittersweet ending of Stranger Things. That's the gut punch. That is it. I think that's exactly what it should have been. Okay, the next one comes from, and by the way, thanks for the question, Kyle. Mike likes movies. Here it goes. Thoughts on Shia LaBeouf possibly returning to Transformers? First and foremost, I would have to get excited about a new Transformers movie. Now, would I like to see big Autobot robots coming back and Optimus Prime saving the day? Yeah, I guess. But if Michael Bay is coming back to do it, I'm sorry, I don't give a shit. Because do you guys remember the last couple Transformers movies? those convoluted 3-hour long bombastic movies where the narrative just was stretched so thin and convoluted where you're just like, what are we even doing here? It got boring and repetitive to watch. Sort of like the later Pirates of the Caribbean movies. But if they were to reboot the entire franchise of Transformers and just go back to like the 1980s time period or something, and I know they sort of did that with the Bumblebee movie, sort of, kind of, but I that's the only thing that would get me excited about seeing more Transformers movies. The fact that Shia LaBeouf is coming back, they're just trying to capitalize on the franchise that existed back 10 years ago. Like, the last good Transformers movie to me was like maybe the third one, The Dark of the Moon, but upon revisit, it's really not that good. I still like the first one, though. The second one sucks. Skylar Wheelock says, can you give us a Christopher Walken impression as Vecna? My kids, time is ticking. That's all I got. I'm sorry. Your mother was impregnated with my DNA. I'm your dad. Isn't that nice? You want to save the day? It's getting worse. I don't know. That's all I got. Oh, the other thing, I'll tack this in if I cut out that first clip. The other thing I did want to talk about when it comes to plot holes was when they go into the abyss. Isn't that where the Demogorgons come from and the Demodogs? Where were they? And I guess for the sake of the final battle against them and the giant kaiju spider, maybe it would have been too much, or maybe Vecna was so weak at that point that he couldn't control the Demogorgons, and they were just off somewhere else. We'll go with that logic. I'll go with that. Okay. But anyway, the next one comes from Robert Giacinta. How's it going, Robert? The final season was my first sexual experience. Continue. Messy, convoluted, girls in a cave, but at the end, I was satisfied. Yes, and it ends in tears as you transcend up the basement stairs. I've been there. I've done it. But yeah, man, I agree. Yeah, we can talk all the shit we want about it. Messy, convoluted. Yeah, objectively speaking, absolutely. But did it make you feel something at the end? And that's all you're going to remember at the end of the day. I don't know about you, but I'm not going to remember episodes 5, 6. Do you remember episodes 5 and 6 of that season? No, you remember the main focus of it. You remember the end. So I feel like they came in at the very last second and saved it. Okay, the next one comes from, and thanks for the question, Robert. Skylar Wheelock says, when are we going to acknowledge that Super 8 is the movie that truly kicked off the modern 80s nostalgia wave, paving the way for Stranger Things and the recent It adaptations? Well, I feel like there was something before Super 8 that came out that was 80s nostalgia. Excuse me. But that's the thing, every 30 years that nostalgia kicks in. So in another 30 years, maybe we will have some nostalgic thing in the 2020s. I don't know what songs are they going to play? I don't know. I couldn't tell you. But I'm just happy we're finally getting to the 90s era so we can live through that nostalgia for the next decade. The next one comes from Stranger Things 5 episode 5 through 7 could have been an hour and a half long episode. Yeah, it could have. They dragged that shit out. Absolutely. Bakatir says Demogorgons can't breed, I believe. Interesting. John, they are in the body of the Mind Flayer. You mean Vecna's lair? The cave? Yeah, I know. The giant spider. Is that what you're talking about? Yes. Bakatir says Cybertron should be gold, not dull, dark, and gray. That would make Cybertron more interesting visually speaking. I can agree with that. Absolutely, man. All right. Let's go to the next one here. I didn't care for Super 8. Yeah, I didn't like Super 8 either. That train scene at the end where it just keeps going and going, looks like a big CGI train. I was like, what is this? It was okay. Was it really 2 hours long? Yeah, the final episode was 2 hours long. I thought it was top notch. I did. You know, it was a little quick to some points, but I thought the ending gave me what I wanted to see. All right, the next one comes from Mike Likes Movies once again says, John, what is your favorite animal to see when visiting the zoo? Also, can I get a quick review of The Fly from 1986? Okay, let's do this, man. So first and foremost, here's your party popper. Thanks for the question. So when I go to the zoo, my favorite zoo animal to look at and really examine are the chimpanzees or the apes. Now, to me, at some point in the evolutionary history of humanity life, where we were bacteria that crawled out of that salty ocean and somehow got lucky, it really feels like there was a branching point at some point in evolution. And at one point we went this way, and at another point, those chimpanzees went another direction. And it's so interesting to look at them and watch them in a cage. And it's kind of sad at the same time. And it really shows us just how cruel we are as humanity. But I really like watching the apes and the chimpanzees like just live their lives in the zoo. And I just watch their mannerisms, what they're doing, what they're thinking. And, you know, when you look at them real close, they have like little human features with their hands, their fingers, the way they move. They're just primitive. They're very primitive. So that's one of my favorite animals to look at in the zoo. But also, I'll tell you this, man, giraffes. Have you ever just went to the zoo and really looked at a giraffe? Like really looked at a giraffe and was like, how the fuck does that exist? How did that get there? Like what? Could you imagine if you had a 9-foot long neck? Like what are you doing with that? Anyway, what was the next part of your question? Oh, yes. My review of The Fly. I like The Fly. It's been a while since I've seen it, but it's a science experiment gone wrong where Jeff Goldblum's trying to teleport himself, and there's a fly in the teleportation device machine that he's using, and thus his DNA is mixed with that of a fly, and he slowly becomes a fly. And the scenes where he's eating food and puking it back up on said food like a fly does, utterly disgusting. It's been a long time since I've seen the movie, but I've always enjoyed it. The next one comes from Jonas Weather, who says, John, the best thing is that it's over. Stranger Things has been lackluster for years now. Oh, you know what? I would disagree with that. I would completely disagree with that. And that's okay. Hey, that's okay, man. I really feel like season 4 of Stranger Things is probably one of the highlights of the entire series. I thought it got just about everything right. And for me, when it goes to like rewatchability, rewatching Stranger Things season 4 around like Halloween time, that would feel appropriate every fall. So I think season 4 was like one of the highlights. I don't think it got worse by any means. You know, say what you will, season 2 is kind of like a retread. It's more or less what you got from season 1. And I don't hate season 2 of Stranger Things, but it does kind of feel like a filler season. Season 3, the more I've watched it, the less I've loved it. But with all that said, I still think there's a lot of fun to be had in season 3. Like, I love the mall. I love how it's like a summertime sort of comedy vibe of like Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I love that there's a movie theater sequence and they're watching Back to the Future. I think some of the Russian stuff underneath the mall at Hawkins is like a little I like the final showdown with the meat monster. I liked Billy in that season sort of being the human antagonist. The meat monster was okay. The Invasion of the Body Snatchers thing was a bit convoluted. And then you had You had Will's mom basically wanting to sleep with Billy in a cheap hotel. But then again, hey, have you ever looked into Billy's eyes? I would have given it all up for Billy too. Look at that mullet. Ugh. By the way, can I share with you guys? I want to share with you guys my very dark theory on Stranger Things. And I've never shared this with anyone, and I think now is the time to share it with you guys. And I meant to share this 25 minutes ago, but I completely forgot about it. But after this final season of Stranger Things, and how the show sort of talks about and touches on faith and coping and moving on with life, and how essentially throughout this entire series, it's sort of through the perspective of Mike, if you step back and look at it. And the way that the kids cope with all of this craziness and trauma and tragedy is they use D&D to reference what's happening. And they do that so they can better understand these events that they're stuck in. But I think if you step outside of Stranger Things and you step way, way back into the most literal, realistic approach that it has to offer, and hear me out for a second because it is going to get dark. The same way that Mike coped with Elle's death, with that ambiguous ending where he likes to believe that there's a fairy tale ending for her, and that's how he moves on with life. What if, and hear me out, it's going to get dark. What if the entire series of Stranger Things, all the fantastical elements that we see on screen, what if those were just a story and an illusion? And those were actually coping mechanisms for the harsh realities that these characters were actually going through. Okay, so this is where I'm going to start with this. Let's go back to the first season. What if in that first season, a young boy named Mike Wheeler loses his best friend, Will Byers, when he falls into a rock quarry and drowns? What if that's actually what happened? And Mike's entire coping mechanism after that point was this fictional universe of Stranger Things, where the kids go on these wacky adventures and play D&D, and it gets bigger and epic with every new season that comes. And there's sort of a bittersweet ending. What if that was just one big coping mechanism from the mind of Mike Wheeler? We could keep going with it. You want me to keep going? I will. Let's get darker. What if Elle was a real girl that Mike Wheeler met when he's a teenager or a child? And she came from a very, very harsh background where she was abused. And hear me out for a second. What if the whole fictional story around Elle, she wasn't some super powered person with Vecna's blood that lived in Hawkins' lab? What if Elle was just an abused girl who ran away from home? And what if Hawkins' lab was really a metaphor or an allegory for society failing a young child, being cruel and overlooking it and treating them like a science experiment? And what if that little suicide pact that 8 wanted to make with Elle, what if that was like a really troubled teenage girl who couldn't take it anymore, who was depressed and just didn't want to live in the trauma that life had to offer and couldn't do it anymore? What if she wanted to end it all? And it was her choice, as they do say in the series. And that's the real harsh reality of life. And all that other fantastical bullshit of D&D never happened. That's one really dark way to look at it. Just putting it out there. But let's move on to a happy place. John, it sounds like you're trying to turn Stranger Things into Dallas Return of Bobby Patrick Duffy. Yeah, I don't know, man. But that, to me, that was like one thing I took away from Stranger Things. What if it was more meta, or more? What if there was more layers to this shit that we weren't picking up on? Just putting it out there. Some of it you can take literally, but a lot of it was just coping mechanisms and filler to make life go on. You know, maybe Hopper, he was Elle's adopted foster parent because he found her in this tragedy when no one else would take care of her. Maybe that's what that relationship was. And maybe that's all it was. So just, I don't know. Maybe I'm getting too dark. That's the A24 version of Stranger Things. Where's my party popper? All right. Here you go, Jonas Weather. Here you go. Open. I want you to open up your mouth for this one. Go, ah. There you go. Thanks, man. Thanks for the question. And thanks to all of you guys watching right now. We got 361 viewers. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I'm sure you guys wanted to talk about Stranger Things as well. And I've been waiting all day to do this. Like, I was getting antsy wanting to talk about it. Like, I had to get this shit out. So thank you guys so much for joining me. And if you guys are new here, click subscribe if you want to. You don't have to, but I'd appreciate it if you did. That way I can see you next time. And we can be friends forever. Because friends don't lie. Unless you're Elle and you're going to sacrifice yourself in a portal. Okay, the next one comes from Skylar Wheelock once again, who says, did Hollywood misunderstand the lesson of the Dark Knight trilogy, assuming grim and gritty equals prestige, while missing the thematic depth that made Nolan's films resonate? Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah. Are you saying that's what audiences expected out of Stranger Things? I think to some degree they wanted the show to turn into something that it wasn't. And I'm glad it didn't. Now, my biggest complaint once again was kind of like Game of Thrones Season 8, where you sort of like run a little too quick to the finish line at times. That's kind of what they did here. All right, Cold Steel 31 says, I haven't seen Season 4 of Stranger Things. I kind of checked out after 3. I will say Season 1 is the best first season of any show I've ever seen. What's your best first season? Yeah, man. Stranger Things first season's pretty top tier. I mean, I don't have any criticisms with the first season of Stranger Things. And I think that's why we got 4 more. It's really interesting, though, if you step back and study the tonal shift throughout every season of Stranger Things. And most series do this. They get more bombastic and more levity and more epicness and more over the top as they continue on. And the subtleties kind of take a back seat. And you kind of have to do things like that. But for me, the logic behind Stranger Things doing that was it truly transpired into a D&D campaign. Like, what was on paper became a reality. And I liked that. But anyway, some of my favorite first seasons of TV shows, I think Breaking Bad has a pretty top-notch first season. Not a lot of complaints with that. I actually think season 2 or 3 of Game of Thrones is like the best. Maybe it's season 2. I don't remember which one it is, but I think season 2 of Game of Thrones was my favorite. Whenever King Joffrey really like came into power, or whatever season he died in, I don't remember. That was probably my favorite season of Game of Thrones. But yeah, when it comes to like favorite TV series, you got Game of Thrones, you have Stranger Things, you have Breaking Bad, and I'm sure there's a couple others, but man, those are like top 3 for me. So yeah, man, I would definitely recommend going and watch season 4 of Stranger Things. You're missing out. Season 4 and 1 to me is top tier, absolutely. I think those are the 2 big standouts. Like everything else, like it's fine, it's good, but those are the 2 like quintessential ones that I feel like gives you the most. Season 4 is when Joffrey died. Okay. Sorry. Well, that one too. That's a great season. Okay, but anyway, Cold Steel, thanks for the question, man. Party popper right to your face. The next one comes from Flash. How's it going, Flash? 18487. Just rolls right off the tongue. Here it goes. Where were the Demogorgons? It would have been nice to see them and the Demogorgons get destroyed once the Upside Down gets obliterated. Yeah, you know what? I think it would have been nice to see them getting obliterated too, but I think we just have to safely assume with the Abyss being obliterated and the bridge being closed that the Demogorgons are there, you know? But it would have been nice to see 1 or 2 die. Or it would have been maybe nice also, just hypothetically speaking, if Will had like truly used his powers and like took control of like one Demogorgon or something in the finale, the final showdown episode, and used that Demogorgon against Vecna and just like beat the shit out of him with the Demogorgon before like Vecna destroys the Demogorgon. And then like the crew comes in and finishes off Vecna. That could have been one way to look at it. But thanks for the question, Flash. And you also get a party popper. All right. I have one party popper left tonight. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have got more, but I didn't have time today. I'll make it up to you guys next time, I promise you. But here it goes. Zach Smith, 9358 says, I was happy with the more happily ever after ending. I think people just don't know how to act when they get a good/happy ending anymore. Plus, in 20 to 30 years, they'll come back for a sequel show. Well, I think it'll be less than 20 to 30 years. I think it'll be 2 to 3 years because Stranger Things is just too big of an IP to let die. Now, we will be getting an animated series from Netflix. I think it's called like Stranger Things 85. I'll check it out. But we will be getting some spin-off shows. And the fact that Holly Wheeler and Delightful Derek were such big points in this final season, and everyone liked Holly Wheeler. They liked the actress. I thought she was pretty good. I mean, yeah, she looked like she was 12 years old playing a 9-year-old, but nevertheless, I liked it. That could be a possibility. Now, what do they do? Like, what do those characters do in Hawkins once again? Might be a bit repetitive, so I don't know if you can do much there, but I would be okay with a spinoff, but it's just like, what do you do with a spinoff? How do you make it different and new? And not just retread the same thing we already did. I don't know. That's a great question. I'd be curious to see it. But anyway, I agree with you. I think it was a nice bittersweet send-off for everyone. So anyway, man, thank you so much for the question. There's your party popper. Let's go to the next one here. And the next one comes from Wild and Beyond, who says, I know they were going to use Prince, but not in the way I expected it. Missed opportunity. Yeah, that's the other thing I wanted to sort of talk about, but unfortunately I was going a million different directions at once. When it comes to the music in this show, I did talk about how like Metallica was one of my favorite sequences with Eddie playing Master of Puppets on his trailer. That was badass. That was top notch to me. Or when Max was running, listening to Kate Bush, I thought that was another epic, climactic, cinematic sequence with music. But this final episode didn't really have that scene with that epic music. Like, it was sort of missing. And like the final showdown in the abyss when they were fighting Vecna, I was like, okay, when is the epic song going to start? Where is it? And they just never did it. I was like, yeah. So one of my nitpicks with it, absolutely, sort of a missed opportunity. I would agree with you. And thanks for the question. Skylar Wheelock back again says, is the Terminator built on a closed time paradox where Skynet creates itself and John Connor is only born because he sends Kyle Reese back in time, or one giant time loop because they already existed? My name is Joe. All right, man. Okay, what? What'd you say to me? Okay. I would need to sit there and read that 17 times. I don't know. That's the best answer I can give you, man. I don't know. But if time travel is a possibility, it's an unlimited paradox on top of an unlimited paradox. How do you close it? I don't think you can. And that's the thing about time travel. Listen, if time travel exists, I just want to make a DeLorean, go back into time, and steal an almanac to be a millionaire one day. I just want to bet on sports and win. That's it. That's all I want to do with it. All right, let's go to the next one here. And the next one comes from Skylar Wheelock, who also says, what was the first series you were completely addicted to? The series that paused everything else in your life? Oh, man. I mean, if you really want to back up in time, it was the Batman animated series from the 1990s. That was the reason that I came home from every day after school, and was like happy to be alive. But if you want to go to like actual like well-made cinematic series, I remember the first season of Walking Dead. I was really into. I thought that was pretty good. Watching that for the first time back in like 2009. Also, when I was I'll back up. Let's back way up. I have more answers to that as I go deeper and darker into my childhood past trauma. Let's start with this. When I was a kid, I had HBO, and I would watch HBO quite often in my room late at night. And one of the shows I got really into, and maybe an 11-year-old kid shouldn't be watching this shit, but I did. And maybe that says a lot about why I am and what I'm doing today. But I used to watch the show Oz quite a bit on HBO. It's a prison drama. And it goes pretty deep and it goes pretty hard, figuratively and literally, depending on who was in the shower room that day. So I would watch Oz all the time as a kid. And then I would watch The Sopranos. I watched a little bit of The Wire. So those are a few that I remember liking quite a bit as a kid. The next one comes from Claudio Rogajan. How's it going, Claudio Rogajan? Well, this is Claudio Rogajan 1234. But anyway, so Avatar 3 wasn't very good, I thought. I talked about that on the 2 live shows ago for I think 25 minutes. I think Avatar 3 was more or less exactly what I expected. It was more or less exactly what I expected. Visual spectacle, 40 new minutes of story being told in a 3-hour movie. And it was fun to look at. Do I have the urge to rewatch it anytime soon? Not really. Am I sort of losing my attention span when it comes to this story on Pandora? Yes, I am. But I still think if they make an Avatar 4 and crap it out to theaters around the holiday season, they'll still make another $1 billion. But I really say this, and I say this to James Cameron because I know he watches every single one of my live streams every night. And thank you, James Cameron. Thank you so much. You're the true inspiration behind why I love films. Terminator 2 Judgment Day, one of the best action movies, if not the most quintessential action movie ever made. So thank you, James Cameron. And Titanic, I still love that shit. But if you're watching this, I don't think we need an Avatar 4 and 5. I genuinely think there's no reason that we can't wrap up this story in the next Avatar film in 3 hours. I think one more Avatar is all you need because you're already dragging it out. Let's just end it here. So those are my thoughts on Avatar. The next one comes from Night King 01. How's it going, Night King 01? Did you notice they shot for shot copy the ending scene from Stand By Me when Mike is typing his story? It's the exact same as Richard Dreyfuss doing that at the end of Stand By Me. It hits different given what has happened with Rob Reiner. Yeah, man. Like I said earlier, it was definitely very Stand By Me-esque, with Mike being a writer, much like Gordy becomes a writer in Stand By Me, reminiscing about the story of his friends, and then the leader of that friend group, Chris Chambers, was randomly stabbed in the neck trying to break up a fight at a fast food restaurant, and he died. And that's the bittersweet ending to Stand By Me. Sort of like the same bittersweet ending to Stranger Things, isn't it? Some heavy influence, but hey, for a series that has piggybacked off 80s nostalgia and 80s movies, to do it once again, I think is completely fine. So I did notice it though. Absolutely. Wild Man Beyond says, Stranger Things or Cobra Kai? Well, I do like me some John Kreese. Yeah, I'm going to hang out with these teenage kids for the next 5 years because Cobra Kai, that's why. Vietnam. Sweep the leg. I'm going to escape prison because I need to go back and teach adolescent teens Cobra Kai. Yeah, Cobra Kai I think was junk compared to Stranger Things in every sense of the word. Now, I liked Cobra Kai for the first season, maybe 2. And then I kind of fizzled out by season 3. I didn't even watch the last season in its entirety. And I just stopped caring. And so I think I'm safely going to go with Stranger Things. One of the most cinematic series of all times are Cobra Kai, which was it was good, some good nostalgia, but I'm going with Stranger Things, man. All right, the next one comes from Robert Giacinta. How's it going once again, Robert? I don't want to be mean, but there is no way Derek could have fit through the hole in the cave or pull Holly away from Vecna. Yeah, I need to go back and watch the series finale one more time. I've only seen it once. And I remember my wife even commented, she's like, there's no way Derek's ass is going to fit through that hole. So yeah, I'm like, did he go through that hole? I don't know. Yeah, they didn't show it, did they? So you're right. All right, let's go to the next one here. Poophead Taserface. How's it going, Poophead Taserface? If my name wasn't John, I would only hope that my mother would name me Poophead Taserface. Anyway, here it goes. Why do movies and shows age so quickly? Watching season 1 of Stranger Things is kind of depressing knowing all the kids are adults now. Movies you think come out 5 years ago are really like 10 to 15 years old. Yeah, that's the weird thing about getting old. Time just starts going quicker and quicker, and your perception of time just does this. The years become months, the months become days, and before you know it, poof, you're laying in a pine box with your loved ones looking at you. Anyway, it's getting dark. It's getting dark here. On a positive note, as far as your question goes, yeah, man, Stranger Things, I mean, it took course over the course of like a decade. You got to think, like, Stranger Things, it came out in 2016, but started filming in 2015. So, like, you had a solid 10 years. And when you're casting teenage kids, and then by the time you're done, they're in their mid-20s, they're going to look like adults. It's just what happens. Now, I will say this. I could suspend disbelief because, like, most of these kids, they still look a little younger. They still look like they're at least, like, touching on 20. Some of them, like Dustin, for me, I would buy him being a 20-year-old kid all day. And most of them do. So I didn't think it was that tough of a pill to swallow, And I think they ended it, like, right at the perfect time they could have. Like, if this went on another year, you've gone too long. It's past due. We can't do it anymore. But yeah, it is kind of weird. You watch, like, these little kids who were like 13 years old, and now they're adults. And I remember I started watching Stranger Things when I was like in my late 20s. So, for me, I was always an adult, but it makes me feel even older now watching these like grown up kids. And I'm like, some of them look older than I do. What's going on here? Like, Mike, you look 42 years old. How did this happen? All right. The next one comes from Skylar Wheelock, once again, who says, what is the better James Cameron movie, T2 or Titanic? Well, I think we're safely going to go with Titanic on that one, man. Now, I love me some, I'm kidding. I'm going to go safely with Terminator 2 Judgment Day. For me, it's the better movie. It's the more rewatchable movie. It's the one that it hits with me, but Titanic also hits with me. Because the thing about me, maybe most of you don't know, is in elementary school, I was like obsessed with the Titanic. I thought that was so mind-blowing that this unsinkable ship, in fact, sunk. And that was like, I was addicted to researching that. I would buy every Titanic book, watch every documentary. So by the time that movie came out, I was like really looking forward to it. And the fact that it was from James Cameron, and at the time I was a stupid little kid in 4th grade, but I was like a huge fan of Terminator 2 Judgment Day, and I liked James Cameron movies like True Lies. I saw in cinemas with my dad. So I was a fan of James Cameron, and the fact I was like, wait, the guy who directed Terminator is directing Titanic? Okay. And then I remember watching in theaters, and I was blown away by it. I still remember watching Titanic with my mom and feeling that sense of awkwardness when Rose got naked and Jack drew her for 10 cents. And every time I close my eyes, I think about that. Anyway, so I'm going to go T2 Judgment Day. That's my favorite, but I love me some Titanic. The next one comes from James Dozier. How's it going, James? John, I hope you had a great 2020, or I hope you have a great 2026. Happy New Year. Well, hey, man, thank you so much, James, and I hope all of you have a great 2026. Today is the first day of the rest of our lives. It's 2026. How did we get here? I don't know. When I think back to being a kid and I think about the future and I think of Wow, what is 2025 going to look like? Are we going to have flying cars? Live in unity? Have a cure to cancer? No, we don't have any of that shit. But what we do have is TikTok. We have that, so there's that. But we're here now. The future is now. And it's really scary, isn't it? Like 2026, what does it hold? Who knows? Where's this going? I couldn't tell you. My only goal is to make 2026 slightly better than 2025. That's my only goal. So what is your guys' goal? What do you guys want to get done in 2026? Let me know. And also, since this is a live show about movies, what is your most anticipated movie of 2026? Let me know that down below as well. I'm hoping, at least when it comes to cinema, it's a much better year for movies. And by the way, on a quick side note, I will have my top 10 best and worst movies list on the next live show. We will talk about that. So like maybe this Sunday night, look out for a brand new live show. We'll talk all about my top 10 best and worst movies of the year. So look out for that. I have my lists, and my top 10 was probably like the hardest top 10 list I've ever had to come up with. There's movies I liked this year, but not a lot of movies I loved. And when I say loved, I mean movies that like they give you that rewatchability. After I watch it, I want to go back and rewatch it right away. And there wasn't very many movies this year, if any, that really did that for me. We got AI, baby. We did get AI. It is the beginning of the end, and we're all here to witness it. Just get ready. Damn, I have to look and see. Spider-Man Brand New Day. Okay, I'm looking forward to that. The Odyssey, it's definitely number one for me. Dune Messiah, hoping it's good. Avengers Doomsday, obviously. A lot of Dune Messiahs. The Michael Jackson movie, we've talked about that. I do want to watch it. I just don't want it to be this glossy, like, biopic that doesn't really give you, like, a real picture of who Michael Jackson was. And I'm safely going to assume that the Michael Jackson biopic will more or less celebrate Michael Jackson. I don't think they're going to dive too much into the like traumatic childhood past, but I wish they did. Hi, John. Can you please talk about the MacGuffin briefcase? How did this random guy get the Mind Flayer's essence? They glossed over it. Yeah, I guess that was another point I forgot to talk about. Okay. So when it comes to this final episode of Stranger Things, and I'm going to tack in this thought after the fact, there are some unanswered questions to say the least, right? Like the MacGuffin briefcase. How did the essence of the Mind Flayer get into this guy's hands? What happened? Where are we going with this? Why is Henry a Boy Scout chasing him? I don't know. Now, you have to understand this. There is a play based on Stranger Things, which is sort of like a prequel. And in that prequel, they dive into these things, I believe. I haven't seen it, but I would like to at some point. So my safe assumption, my theory from my stupid brain to you is I feel like they were trying to tie in that Stranger Things play to some degree without twisting and turning too much of the current narrative to make the play relative to some degree within the canon of Stranger Things, the series. So it's one of those things where like it's there. We're not going to ask too many questions. I'm sure the play explains it. And thus that's a reason that people should go see the play. That was my logic from watching it take place in the series. Go see the play. That's your story. That's the backstory to that. Yeah, a little bit underwhelming if you've never seen it or you don't plan to, but that's sort of my takeaway from it. I'm glad you brought that up because that was one point I did want to make. Praying that the live-action He-Man film will be good. We'll see. Yeah, man, listen. I think the odds are 50-50. Now, if they make a He-Man movie that's somewhat self-aware and a lot of fun and epic with that 80s dark fantasy vibe, I think you have gold at your fingertips just waiting to ooze out. Listen, people love the 80s. They love synth music. Stranger Things. We love shit like this. And if they can just get that tone with a He-Man movie with a little bit over-the-top comedy, if you will, And as long as it's better than that last abomination against humanity, Masters of the Universe, starring Dolph Lundgren, oh my God. I think we'll be okay. Okay, the next one comes from James Doshier. How's it going, James? James Doshier says, John, I hope... Oh, we already answered this. I already answered that, James. We already talked about the new year. Who cares? Just another year closer to death, if you ask me. Just another year as I rot away and wither away from humanity. I'm kidding. I'm looking forward to 2026. Okay. Robert Giacinta back again says, John, I need your help. Stuckman showed up at my house last night, and he's got her in the Upside Down doing Stranger Things. What should I do? I guess just take an axe and chop his head off. I don't know. Hermione Watke says, I was crying so much. Yeah, at the Stranger Things ending, hey, listen, I didn't want to sound like a little bitch. I really didn't. But the tears were trickling up in my eyes when I thought about it. And watching that final episode. And that's, for me, I know that's when it did its job. When an ending makes you reminisce about everything that came before it and makes you think and ponder and feel something, I'm like, that's a good ending. That's a fulfilling ending. Just don't let her get Stuckmanized, is what Tony says. All right, if any YouTube members are in here, please chime in right now. I'm looking at the normal chat. And also, if you guys want to chime in the normal chat, I'm looking at it right now. Now's your time to shine. So get those questions in. I'll answer one more here from the Amazing Fart Boy. Amazing Fart Boy, a superhero that I think we all need in life. Anyway, here it goes, Amazing Fart Boy. This one's for you, man. What's your favorite Lathamos? Am I reading this right? Lathamos? Am I stupid? Lathamos movie besides Begonia. Oh, Poor Things, and the favorite would probably be his next most accessible movie, but The Lobster and Dogtooth are good. I believe they all have at least one Oscar nom. Oh, you're talking about the director. Sorry, man. I could not remember the director of who you were talking about there. I was like, what is this, like a genre I don't know about or something? I'm like, what is this? What subculture of a subculture is this shit? I think Begonia is like one of my favorites. Begonia is in my top 10 this year. I'm just going to tell you right now. So I think that's my favorite out of all the movies you mentioned by far. I thought Begonia was top notch. I love simple movies that are super character driven with, you have this back and forth dialogue that takes place in one location. I love movies like that. And Begonia was like perfection. Now, I don't think it was perfect, but it was really entertaining and riveting. And it was one of the better movies I was surprised by in 2025. And I have it back there on 4K somewhere. Okay, the next one comes from, did anyone else get Mr. Weasley vibes from Joyce when she was chopping off Vecna's head? It was like the scene in Bellatrix. Did anyone else get those vibes? Is it just me, or did season 4 feel more grand and epic and emotional compared to season 5? Yeah, that's my one big criticism with season 5 of Stranger Things. There are some big epic moments, but as far as like making those moments really stand the test of time and stand out as moments I want to revisit, I don't know if they were as cinematic as some of the sequences in season 4. Even small sequences in season 4, I feel like stand out more than some of the scenes in season 5. And that is my one big criticism. Absolutely. It's always cool to see a small movie taking place primarily set in one location. That's part of the reason why Warfare is my favorite film of 2025. Yeah, fair. I liked Warfare. It's on my maybe list of top 10. I've watched it once, and I thought it was really intense. And if you want to have like a POV into war and make it intense and give yourself a panic attack, Yeah, Warfare can do that shit for you. I thought it was awesome. Now, with all that said, will I go back and rewatch it anytime soon? I don't know. John, did you watch The Penguin or The Peacemaker? I watched 2 episodes of both of them, and that's as far as I got. Daniela Riki says, my boyfriend and I watched a movie on Paramount Plus with Pete Davidson called The Home. It was an insane mind F movie that had both our jaws dropped, our top 10 movies of the year for sure. What is this called? With Pete, it's got Pete Davidson in it, called The Home? Oh, I have not seen that. I don't even know what that is. Is it good? Someone tell me. You guys tell me if a movie's good. Let me sit back and just enjoy. Tell me what you think about movies now. I've been talking for an hour and 45 minutes. It's your turn. Let me take a drink of this Dr. Pepper, though, real quick. I must have drank myself about 14 Dr. Peppers. All right. I'll tell you another, you know what? Can we talk about a movie that I watched last night? Would you guys like to talk about a new movie? Here it goes. The wife and I, we wanted something lighthearted after Stranger Things because I was on the verge of crying up all of my man tears. And I only have so many man tears to give society. Once they're gone and depleted, it's like oil. It's a natural resource that will not come back anytime soon, okay? So anyway, I was like, let's watch something new that we haven't seen that's sort of a comedy movie. So we settled on the movie Good Fortune starring Keanu Reeves, Seth Rogen, and what's-his-face. And I thought the first act started off okay. It was sort of like a switching places movie. And I was like, oh, okay, I like where they're going with this. You know, the guy down on his luck who delivers DoorDash and gets shit on all day is switching places with a tech millionaire who lives in a mansion in the Hollywood Hills. Okay, this could be fun. And then as the movie progressed and Keanu Reeves' character came into the mix, and it was like, it just lost its way and was so meandering where halfway through the movie, I was like, I don't even care about anyone. Like, the plot to this movie went bye-bye a long time ago, and it wasn't funny anymore, and it was just like, wasn't interesting enough to watch. I was like, so I was not a big fan of Good Fortune. I thought it started off really good. I thought it was like fun. I liked watching him like being a DoorDash driver and dealing with shitheads all day, but man, it was just never quite got there. Horror movie of 2025, Weapons or Sinners? I think when it comes to... See, Weapons to me isn't necessarily like a deep dive horror movie. I think Weapons... I'm sorry. Sinners to me isn't like this hardcore horror movie. It definitely has a subgenre of horror in it. It has a subgenre of a multitude of other things. But Weapons to me was the much more edge of your seat horror movie, where I was like really intrigued with this mystery and the suspense. And with each different act of the movie, it just got more crazy and over the top and went off the rails even more. And when it got into the aunt, what is the aunt Glinda? What is her name? Is it Glinda? What is the evil aunt's name? Someone help me. I always forget this. But anyway, once it dived into her witchcraft, I was like, I was not expecting this twist and turn, and I really enjoyed it. Aunt Gladys, thank you so much. And I enjoyed Weapons quite a bit. So for me, Weapons is definitely my top 10. Now, I did also enjoy Sinners quite a bit as well. When it comes to why am I giving all this shit away? We're going to talk about this in the top 10, okay? Sinners was good, but ultimately it felt like it was heavily inspired by Tarantino. And I feel like the director needs to come out and admit such things because it was basically from dusk till dawn. Okay, just saying. The blueprint was the same. John, do you agree that Dr. Martin Brenner is the best villain of Stranger Things? They should have saved him for the final season. Kay and Vecna were lame villains. Yeah, Vecna kind of got more lame as time went on, in my opinion. Kay was just completely useless. They wasted Linda Hamilton. I'm just a bad military lady who wants to, do this. Whatever. Who cares? And another question you have to ask yourself, why did the military need their lab in the Upside Down? What was why was that necessary? That just seems like a dangerous thing to do. I didn't was I missing something there? Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, I like Dr. Brenner. I think Dr. Brenner was the most complex villain of the entire series by far. But I was glad that he died in season 4. His connection with Elle, I was like, it's time to sort of separate things here. I was very underwhelmed by Sinners. Yeah, to be completely truthful with you, because that's what I like to do. I'm not some disingenuous asshole who's going to tell you what you want to hear. I don't care. Oh, did I upset your fragile feelings? Are you fickle? Unsubscribe. Go find some other asshole on YouTube who will give you a false sense of security and smile about everything. No. You want the truth? You come here for the truth. And if you can't handle it, just don't leave me, please. I'm kidding. I take everything back I said. What was the point of that question? Oh, yes. So when it comes to Sinners, I think the first 2 acts of Sinners, the buildup, like the brothers coming down to Alabama, the way that it looks, the way that it was filmed with actual like 70 millimeter film stock, that's fun. That's great. But once it turns into everyone becoming a vampire, it's not that I think it ruined the movie or, made it bad per se. It's just, it wasn't, I don't know. I was hoping they would do more with it than they did. And I get where they're coming from with the logic, like the devil goes down to Georgia, the whole like blues folklore that coincides with all of that. I just thought it was the least interesting aspect of it for me. Okay. Oh, JS Paniel 32 has become a member. Yay! Thanks, man. Hope you stick around, ask some questions. All right, John, is Greenland 2 something I need to watch? I didn't watch the first one. So listen, Greenland 2 comes out this week. Now, I am sort of excited to watch it. I love post-apocalyptic natural disaster movies. I love them. Never get tired of them. But when it comes to the first Greenland, I thought the concept was better than the execution. I thought it was a fine movie to watch at home. It was fine. I thought there were some interesting ideas, but ultimately it was sort of underwhelming in some aspects. But when it comes to Greenland 2, it definitely looks like they're putting more like spectacle in it. And I don't want things to blow up just for the sake of blowing up. I hope that there is a good, fulfilling story there. And I want a sense of realism when it comes to a movie like that. Like, I want to see what society and people would actually do in the face of a natural disaster. Like, I want to see what they would actually do. Like, if we knew an asteroid was on its way to Earth, what would humanity actually do? That's more interesting to me than, like, the bombastic shit that they do in Michael Bay movies like Armageddon, okay? But with all that said, I love me some Armageddon, so I won't talk too much shit. But I am sort of looking forward to Greenland 2. Watch the first one. It's a fine little go-to-bed movie. When you have nothing better to do, it's 9 o'clock at night, the day is over, you want some new shit to watch, get in bed, click on Greenland. It's a fine, okay movie to watch. But I do want to see the sequel, yeah. Also this month, there's some other interesting movies coming out this month. We got 28 Years Later, Bone Temple coming out. I'm kind of looking forward to that. I hope they bring back a big giant zombie dick for the sequel, and I hope it's even bigger and better this time around. Also, and if you haven't seen the first one, no, I'm not crazy. I'm not a pervert. That happens, okay? That's a fact. That's a fact. The other thing I'm looking forward to at the end of this month is I'm looking forward to that Survivor movie, that island movie. What is it called? Survive Alive? What is it? Someone help me out. I'm not looking it up. They go to an island. There's some drama there. It just looks fun. I love 2012 and The Day After Tomorrow. The Day After Tomorrow I like The Day After Tomorrow. I've never loved it as much as some people do. 2012 is just bombastic nothingness, which I kind of enjoy as well. It's a good guilty pleasure. But when it comes to like natural disaster movies, I think Deep Impact is like, that got it right. I think Sinners was telling their version of Robert Johnson creating devil music with the music vibe. Yeah, I absolutely agree. It was sort of like the backstory of how that folklore came to be. I got all that, and that's clever and cool. I'm just saying they basically used Dusk Till Dawn to do it. Best season of television this year for me, it's Severance or Pluribus. I watched the first episode of Pluribus, and it's not that I don't want to continue it. I just don't have the urgency to do it. Now, for me, when it comes to Pluribus, it's kind of one of those shows where I'm just going to wait till the season finale and binge it. If that makes any sense. I did not watch Severance. I didn't watch the new season of Severance. Mercy, ? The Minority Report clone. No, not Mercy. Not that shitty Chris Pratt movie that looks like it should have been crapped out to Amazon Prime, like his last sci-fi movie that was, whatever that was called. Not talking about Mercy, though I will go see Mercy. I don't think it's going to be very good. It looks like it was written by AI. I'm talking about the one where they go to the island. Send Help. Yes, it's Send Help. Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, Send Help's the movie I'm talking about. I love a good survival movie on a tropical island. I watch Castaway once a year, so give me another one. Though this one will have more of like a horror element to it. What's Stranger Things WWE things? What do you think is going to happen? Yeah, I'm a huge wrestling fan, so this Monday on Monday Night Raw on Netflix on WWE, they're supposed to have a Stranger Things themed night. I don't know, man. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe Braun Breaker wrestles a Demogorgon. I could not tell you. I'd imagine some of the cast might be there in attendance. Maybe they'll have like a theme to some degree. I don't know what they're going to do. Maybe they'll have a Stranger Things themed match, which you could almost do with like the Wyatt Six. Somehow, maybe. I don't know. That might be kind of lame. I couldn't tell you, man. I have no clue. I'm definitely going to check it out, though. Severance is S tier TV. I've heard it's good, man. I know people love it. Send Help is Sam Raimi's next film. I'm excited for. Yeah, I keep forgetting that Sam Raimi directed that. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. All right, Flappity says, opinion on Stranger Things cinematic universe Anno announcement? Was there a cinematic universe announced, or was there like a sequel spin-off thing? I know there were some sequels, some spin-offs announced. If there was a Stranger Things cinematic universe, it could happen. Sure. I mean, listen, when you have a franchise or an IP worth this much money, and it's like the most popular thing Netflix has ever crapped out, you best bet they're going to do more with this shit, okay? So just give it time. Give it time. But the biggest problem they can do is make it too soon. That would be the biggest detriment. Listen, I don't know if I want to see exactly what we just saw with Stranger Things, but I do definitely think if you tell a brand new story to some degree, and it's fun and interesting, yeah, I would be okay with that. What do they do? Where do they go? I don't know. How many dimensions can there be? It's like, oh, here's another dimension with another bridge. That's the mystery. Oh, okay. Like, how do you do that to make it interesting? I don't know. How do you make it feel like you're not just copy and pasting what already came before it, but better? Okay, let's go to the next one here. Are you watching Landman, John? I've never watched Landman. I like me some Billy Bob Thornton, but I never got into it. Stranger Things in Russia. We spent enough time in Russia with the season 4 of Hopper escaping prison. I don't know if I want to go back to Russia anytime soon. I mean, what if they did like a South Korean Stranger Things or a Japanese Stranger Things? I don't know. That could be kind of crazy and weird. That could be kind of interesting. Like, I almost feel like there's some kind of cool cultural significance you could include in that to make it feel different and fresh and new. Like, my brain thinks Squid Games, but can you incorporate something with that, like, same vibe into Stranger Things? I don't know. With less death, obviously. I think that would be interesting. South Korean Stranger Things. There you go. Where do they go? They don't go into the Upside Down. They go into North Korea to save the day. And Vecna is now Kim Jong-un. Let's go to the next thing here. All right. The next one comes from John. Which main character from Stranger Things will have the biggest career out of the youngest cast? I got Zadie. Finn is good, but he cares more about music. Yeah, I definitely think Zadie Sink will have the most, like, long-lasting, dynamic career as an actress. I can see her doing very well. She could be like the new Emma Stone. And I think her being in Spider-Man will definitely help catapult her. Finn Wolfhard, I could see doing some stuff. Yeah, the other characters, they're just like, I feel like they're going to be a little typecasted to some degree, like definitely Dustin. Millie Bobby Brown, the more I see of her, like, I like her in Stranger Things, but outside of Stranger Things, I've never seen her in anything that was that great. Like Electric State, no thank you. That other crappy Netflix movie about the damsel, whatever that was, with the dragon in it, So, yeah, that's a great question. I think Zadie Fink honestly has probably the biggest career ahead of her. Just an assumption. Also, I really think that Nell Fisher, that like 14-year-old girl who played Holly Wheeler, I think she's going to do well for being a child actress for like the next 3 to 4 years. Because I feel like what happens in Hollywood is you have this one up-and-coming young actress, and they start casting her in everything. And she did good enough in Stranger Things, and I think that's going to happen for like the next 3 to 4 years. Dustin is already a millionaire, so... Yeah, here's the other thing. Let's all step back and look at it from this viewpoint. Okay, here's my takeaway from this. When it comes to the cast of Stranger Things, and maybe some of their careers won't take off and they'll be the next big A-list star. But here's the thing that it'll be okay. I promise you. They're already millionaires, first and foremost. But the other thing is, these actors, for the next decade, or maybe even next 20 years plus, they could earn a significant living by just going to Comic-Cons, taking pictures, and signing autographs. Because they can live off of Stranger Things the rest of their lives comfortably. They will be okay. I'm almost jealous that I was never a child star that could have been in like 3 seasons of a cool nostalgic show. That way I could just live off of my laurels and sign autographs and take pictures with people at Comic-Cons. Like, they'll be okay, I promise you. When you're charging $200 for an autograph and a picture, I assure you they will be able to pay their rent for the rest of their lives. Did you enjoy Dexter Resurrections? I did not watch Dexter Resurrections. I watched one season of Dexter. I know how it goes. I get it. I just, for some reason, man, I couldn't. And I know everyone's like, John, but you should love Dexter. And I'm like, yeah, on paper, it sounds exactly like what I want. But the show just isn't quite ever what I wanted. I know. It's just one of those things that are never going to connect. Me and Dexter are like two ships sailing in the night. We just pass each other by. I'm like, hey, it looks good. It looks entertaining. I get it. Everyone loves it. But I'm not into it. And I know some of the seasons weren't that good. Did you see the Stranger Things video game that was supposed to come out? I did not. I did not hear about that. Tell me more about it. I can look it up. Let me see. If you're lying to me, I'm going to be very upset. Stranger Things video game. Let's look it up. Here's some little crappy video game, but I don't know what that is. I'm seeing these like little 8-bit games, man. I don't know what you're talking about. Here's this. Here's this. Now I'll tell you. Now what that reminds me of right there, it sort of looks like Zombies Ate My Neighbors. Now, if you made a Stranger Things game in the same style of Zombies Ate My Neighbors, okay, I will play that. I can dig that. It's kind of what it looks like, though. Is that what it was, or is this real? I don't even know what this is. So it's a real game on PlayStation. I didn't play this, though. Honestly, John, do you think I have a shot with Zadie Sink? Probably not. She's Lucas's girl. Back off. I don't know, man. Walk by her playing some running up that hill. See what happens. I think there's a VR game. I hate VR games. I've never seen a VR game that I was into. Like, I just don't think they're fun. Sorry. That's the detriment of VR games. It's like, yeah, the concept sounds kind of cool. Like, it's super interactive. I put this thing on my head and I'm in another dimension. But then you got to like stand up and move around. And after like 20 minutes, I'm like, oh yeah, this is why I like video games. I can lay on my fat ass and just hold a controller in my hand. That to me, I will take a back seat on the immersiveness so I can have a more enjoyable laid back experience. All right, we got another question here from JS Paniel32, who says, what do you think about the Stranger Things possible spinoffs? Well, we did talk about that, and I would be okay with that. By the way, man, since you are a member, you can just chime in the normal chat, and I'll do my best to read it. You don't got to send super chats, okay? You don't have to do that. But thank you so much. Listen, I will take a Stranger Things spinoff show. If it takes place in the 1990s, it's a different group of kids on a different adventure, and it doesn't feel like a cheap copy and paste, I will be okay with that. I just don't know how you duplicate that same magic once again. It's almost impossible. Because the thing about Stranger Things, when you go back to 2016, and the way all of those seasons progressed was it started very subtle. The first season of Stranger Things was sort of dark and bleak, and like it wasn't this bombastic over-the-top action series yet. Like it had a darkness to it with that 80s nostalgia, and it felt very authentic at times. And then it goes a little more crazy and off the rails as the later seasons. So my point is, if they do make a spinoff, they really need to start that new spinoff show the same way that they started Stranger Things 1. Don't just go all bombastic off the rails instantaneously. Start slow. Give us some nuance. We don't need to see them flying around fighting Demogorgons in the first episode. That's all I'm saying. I think spinoffs might ruin it. Yeah, man, spinoffs can ruin it. Well, you know what? I'm going to back up. Spinoffs shouldn't ruin anything for you because you always have that original. You can always just cling on to that. But a bad spinoff absolutely will ruin it. John, do you think a spinoff would have involved destroying the Mind Flayer? Now that's a good take. Okay, let's go down that path. I like that. Okay, so maybe the spinoff is just a continuation of going deeper into another dimension, like the Abyss or Dimension X. Maybe. Okay, maybe there's more they can do with Dimension X. Maybe they can explore Dimension X much more than they have. Okay, that's interesting. We could maybe. John, watch Selling Superman. It's a pretty good documentary about the guy's dad who was autistic, and he just had every comic book you'd want hidden away. Interesting. Okay, that's cool. I relate to that. There's a reason I collect movies. I'm fairly certain we are all on the spectrum to some degree, aren't we? It's okay. Just means you have a piqued interest in certain things and topics. But I will check it out. Selling Superman. Okay. I will look into that. John, what's the cartoon going to be? Then it looks all right. Yeah, I guess the cartoon's called Stranger Things 85, and it takes place between season 2 and season 3. So I don't know what they're going to do in that like progresses the story that wasn't like, how do you fill that in and they don't mention any of those events? I don't know. We'll see. Maybe it'll be good. I have no clue what the premise of it is though. I don't know what they were doing. Also, do they come back and voice the characters? Let me know that. Hey, John, did you know that the actor of Vecna was in Harry Potter? I did. Yes, I did. I did know that. He was also in a few other things. And for some reason, I can't remember. Let's look it up. Vecna actor roles. Wasn't he in Game of Thrones or something? I don't know. I'm not digging that deep. Thinking about Hopper already has a better career out of the cast right now. Oh yeah, David Harbour, absolutely. I thought we were just talking about the kid actors. Yeah, I think David Harbour will be okay. He's a pretty good actor. But like, how do you not typecast these people? The thing is, here's the detriment with starring in a long-lasting decade series, is people basically ingrain that performance with who you are. So when you're an actor and you star in 3 different movies a year and you play a different role every single time, yeah, I saw that movie, but I didn't watch that movie for 10 years straight with 75 episodes. But when it comes to like actors like David Harbour, who we know is like the dad character from Stranger Things, it's like, how do you remove that out of the brains of everyone that it's ingrained into for the last decade? That's the detriment with starring in a TV series. It always has been and probably always will be. Okay, we got one here from Jokerface 501 who says, John, which show battle episode of characters had more plot armor? Stranger Things, season 5 finale fight, or Game of Thrones season 6 Battle of the Bastards? Oh, definitely Stranger Things by far. What plot armor was there in Battle of the Bastards? I mean, really, that final showdown in Battle of the Bastards, which is probably my favorite showdown, that and the battle at the wall. Was that season like 4 or 5? Which season was that with the giants coming down the tunnels and the wildlings trying to invade the wall? I like that. Anyway, Battle of the Bastards, I don't think it had much plot armor. Like, the only thing that really saved the day was Sansa, and she went off and got what's-his-face to come in at the last second and save everybody. But I enjoyed that when they were all surrounded and they were being crushed to death, and even the giants were being crushed to death. I loved that. That was great. He was in the Game of Thrones pilot that was rejected. Oh, really? So there was another Game of Thrones pilot that was rejected besides the Game of Thrones pilot that was accepted? The dude who plays Steve will have a tough time. Yeah, Joe Curry. Yeah, but he's got a music career. He'll be okay. Joe Curry is definitely going to succeed more in music. He's a Grammy-nominated artist. Yeah, he'll be okay, man. He'll be fine. John didn't die. Laugh out loud. Sansa really should have left a few hours earlier to get that army. Yeah, I agree. Nothing like waiting until the last second, though. All right, we got one here from Upshot Music TV who says, Hey, John, joining late, but we'll rewatch the live later. Well, thank you for that. Yeah, don't forget, if you're joining in now, you can just go back and watch the replay at any time you want. They are uploaded for eternity on YouTube. Enjoy. Just finished the final episode with my wife. What are your thoughts on Cena's final match? Well, I hope you enjoyed it, man. I talked all about it for 45 minutes, so I did enjoy it. Yeah, it wasn't perfect, but the ending stuck the landing. John Cena's final match, I talked about this a few weeks ago. I thought it was bittersweet. I liked it overall. I don't think it was perfect, much like this final season of Stranger Things. And the ending is a bit divisive, but I enjoyed it. I did enjoy it. When he tapped out, to me, that was like the logical ending to his career because he's in fact tapping out of pro wrestling. And he willingly did it with a smile on his face. He did it his way. And I liked that. Isn't Finn Wolfhard in a band too? He is in a band. Everyone in Stranger Things is in a band. If Dustin starts a band, I hope it's punk rock. Here we go. Jay Spaniel. Is it J.S. Spaniel or Jay Spaniel? Anyway, he was Grindelwald. Yes, that's right. I knew he was in Harry Potter something or another. The dude who played Jonathan needs to lay off the cocaine. You know what? If I never sold Jonathan Byers again, and I forget the actor's name, it doesn't matter. I would be okay. Because looking at Jonathan for the last 5 seasons was more than enough. That was sufficient. He looked like meth head Leonardo DiCaprio wearing a cheap wig. I didn't really get into the WWE 2K games. The last WWE game I really got into was like SmackDown No Mercy, man. The later wrestling video games I was not that into. I like it. I like pro wrestling. I love it. But just the games, like I loved No Mercy growing up. I loved WrestleMania 2000, even though it kind of sucked. But like after my PlayStation 2 era of video gaming, I just wasn't into them. I heard they might do a 10 years later episode of Stranger Things. Like an epilogue on top of the epilogue? They could. Give it 10 more years. Let's see. Or are you saying they might do that like in a year or two? Hey, listen, I will take anything that follows up with the characters. I would love to just continue on with their lives and their stories. He does give creeper vibes. Are you talking about Vecna? Absolutely. If he can't put kids in his giant upside down spider, he will put them in his basement. Is Avatar 3 worth watching in theaters? I think that's the only place Avatar 3 is worth watching is in theaters. Outside of the spectacle and some of the story, and I mean like some of the story, you don't need to see it. If you're going to watch Avatar, go to the theater to watch it and in 3D. Because there's not many movies that justify the 3D experience, but Avatar is definitely one of them. It gets it right. I will always praise Avatar for being a spectacle with giant blue aliens who make love with their ponytails. Now and forever. Jonathan has a kid and was a New Mutants. No reboot shows that Inwell should not be rebooted for unnecessary plots. I agree. I saw Marty Supreme instead. I really liked it. I saw Marty Supreme as well, and I can tell you it's not my top 10 of the year. Not because like I hated it or completely disliked it. I liked a lot of the movie. I did. It's just I feel like halfway through the movie, and I've said this once, I'll say it again. There is a subplot in Marty Supreme that revolves around a dog for like an hour of the movie. And I just was like, just stop. You lost it. You lost it. You had it and you lost it. And you get it back a little bit at the end. But that really killed the movie for me. But I liked a lot about it. I did. I thought it was probably one of the better Timothée Chalamet performances he's ever given. And when he plays a shithead character that's sort of unlikable, I'm like, yeah, that's sort of what I want to see from Timothée Chalamet. We got one here from Night King 01 who says, John, have you watched any older movies recently? Something classic like The Driver. I feel like a few weeks have passed and I can resume the long-running joke. Well, never let it go, please. And I have not watched The Driver yet. I have not. As far as watching older movies of recent, I did watch Terminator 2 Judgment Day after I watched Avatar to remind myself of a time when James Cameron had his entire career ahead of him and it didn't involve giant blue alien people. I watched Castaway. I do want to go back and rewatch. My wife. My wife has only seen Toy Story 3 once. I know, blasphemy. And I do want to go back and rewatch that. So at some point I will probably go back and rewatch Toy Story 3 sooner than later. I will watch The Driver at some point in life. I promise you, Night King 01. I promise you. J.S. Paniel says, did you ever do a review on Together? I did not do a review on Together. I did talk about it in one of the live shows a while ago, whenever it came out, probably the week it came out. I did like Together. I thought it was like a really good movie. I liked the concept. I liked most of the movie. I thought it was like one of those body dysmorphia gross out movies to the perfect degree. It was good. It was one of those movies, like, I watched it maybe a month ago and I don't remember too much about it at this point. Like, I vaguely remember it, but I can tell you this, it's not my top 10 of the year. But I would recommend watching it at some point for sure. These ads are getting ridiculous. Hey, don't blame the player. Blame the game. I put my ads on medium on the live shows. I put them at medium. So I'm doing what I can. Bye. I don't know what's happening. We're talking about movies and answering questions. I've already talked about Stranger Things for the first 45 minutes, and then we've answered probably 475 questions relating to Stranger Things. And now we're just doing a Q&A for the live show. That's what's happening. I hope I answered that for you. All right, guys, I'm going to answer just a few more questions tonight on this live show. It's been 2.5 hours. So if you guys have any pertinent questions you want me to answer relating to Stranger Things, life, movies, whatever, get those questions, get those topics in now, and I will answer as many questions as I can. But don't worry, I'm not leaving right away. You guys have another minute to get those questions in. So give me some glorious, magical, mystical questions on this first day of the year. Upshot Music TV. I'm sorry, not Upshot. Upshot MMA. Let's get that right. Upshot MMA says, as a fan of WWE, I think you would find my video interesting and entertaining. Would you mind adding it to your watch later and checking it out? As a fan of WWE, okay, man, can you send me a link to your video on X? Can you do that for me? Tag me and send me a link to it, man. I will check it out. That's the best way to get a hold of me. Can you do that for me? I will check it out. I promise you. So thank you. We talked about New Year's resolutions earlier. And, if anything, to be completely real and transparent with you, I think I want to do more on YouTube than I've been doing. Because I like talking about movies. And I love doing live streams. I think this is where I like to be the most. This is my happy place. Why is this my happy place? Well, we don't have to edit anything. It's raw, it's visceral, it's uncut, and it's unapologetic. And we get to talk, and it's interactive. It's just more fun. It's more fun this way. So I want to make more YouTube videos. Also, I need to get back into the gym. My biceps are dwindling by the day, and I need those babies to be pumped back up. Because, hey, listen, the post-apocalypse is upon us. And if I can't bench press my way out of this shit, then what am I going to do with my life? John, what do your siblings think of your channel overall? I think they watch some of it. I don't think they watch all of it. I don't know. I don't know what they genuinely think. I couldn't tell you. I've never delved that deep into it. That's a great question. Maybe I should ask them. Sometimes I leave it up to them. I don't know if they watch everything I do. They get to see me in person. Maybe that's enough. Hey, John, have you ever thought about doing a weekly poll of movies to have viewers vote on and do a review on the film with the highest votes. I think that would be pretty rad. Yeah, I would like to do some more polls and you guys can vote on some topics ahead of time, what you guys want me to talk about. So yeah, absolutely. We can do that. If you guys want like the random movie of the week review, we can crap that out in a live stream. Absolutely. Let's do it. Like Night King 01. You might just get your wish that way. We can talk about The Driver. Hey, that's a good idea. More collaborations if you're ever interested. The thing about collaborations is it's so hard to find a time and a place. It really is. But I would like to have an occasional co-host on the live show every once in a while. Yes, I would. Hey, John, I've been binge watching the Harry Potter movies. Which is your favorite? Honestly, the first movie. The first Harry Potter movie is whimsical. It's fun. Directed by Chris Columbus. I like the way it looks. I like the way it's shot. I like the story. And that's by far my favorite. And a lot of people crap on the second Harry Potter movie. But oddly enough, I'm not in love with the Harry Potter franchise by any means. My wife loves it. She can quote everything. She's read the books multiple times. She has seen the movies probably 197 times. She's hardcore. But for me, like, I like the second Harry Potter movie more than I like most of the sequels that follow it. Because it still has that fun and that whimsy of the first movie. Live reaction of your favorite movies. Well, that's what I do all the time, man. This is everything I'm giving you is a live reaction. Favorite Lindsay Lohan movie. Name one I don't like. Probably Mean Girls. I think that was top tier Lindsay Lohan. Did you ever get her the movies on 4K Blu-ray? I did not. Not yet. I should. The flick pick will return in Avengers Doomsday. Absolutely. I'll have a CGI face holding a little baby. Okay, the next one comes from Knock7694, who says, have you ever thought about doing a weekly poll of movies to have viewers vote on, and you do a review on the film with the highest votes? So we just answered that. So yes, I will do something like that. My word is my bond. Yeah, absolutely. I can do something like that. It's a good idea. But it would definitely have to be like an older movie. So I'm like, how do I give you guys like a handful of older movies? I don't know. Let me think on how to do that and make it make sense. Spaniel, I know I'm saying your name wrong, man. Did you hear Stallone is writing a book? Is he? On what? What's he writing a book about? Upshot MMA says, I think you missed my question. I just answered your question. Oh, I got it, man. I got your question right here. Upshot MMA. Don't worry about that, man. Here it is. From Upshot MMA. I was getting to it. Hang on. Here it goes, man. Hey, John. I know you prefer WWE over the UFC. However, I recently published a video why grappling is boring, except it isn't, which is where I discuss and show some of the best wrestling moments in MMA history. No, I don't dislike MMA. I respect the shit out of it, man. It's intense stuff. I like the theatricality of WWE and the athleticism that goes with it. You know, and is it such a far-fetched from a guy who likes movies? It's kind of in the same vein, isn't it? But yeah, send me the video, man. It sounds really cool. And check it out, guys. If you guys want to check out Upshot MMA's video, it's called Why Grappling is Boring, Except It Isn't. Check it out on YouTube. Okay, man. I'll check it out. It sounds cool. And thanks for the question. I could see that being interesting. Like, listen, so let me back up with this. Give you some more insights to me as a person and who I am and the way I tick. I used to do amateur wrestling in middle school and high school. I did it. I did it for 3 years. And so I'm all about like amateur wrestling. I get it. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Like, when you're wrestling and it's just you against one other person, you don't have a team to rely on. It's just you and this other person. Oh man, there was nothing harder physically I had ever done in life. And I remember one practice, we were running around because someone got in trouble, and our coaches made us run like 7 miles during practice. And I remember just puking as I was running and swallowing it. And oddly enough, that kind of was like the last year I did wrestling because of that. Anyway, let's go to the next one here. Claudia Rogajon back again says, I just watched the movie SLC Punk with Matthew Lillard for the first time, and some of it rang a little too true to real life. What do you think about the movie? I really enjoyed it. That is one of those movies. I already know the cover. It's got his tongue out on the cover of it. I lied to you. I won't. Is his tongue out on the cover? I don't know. Yeah, but this is one of those movie titles I always stopped and looked at in the video store and just never watched the entire movie. I'm sure I've seen bits and clips of it online, but I've never watched the entire movie. And it's always seemed like a movie I would enjoy. So, but yeah, it's one of those movies I've never seen. So I will add it to the watch list. What would you give it? What would you give it, Claudio? Out of 10. All right. Kevy Reyes says, will Chris Jericho return this upcoming Raw? I think if there was ever a time and a place, Chris Jericho, the guy who had one of the biggest debuts in WWE of all time with a countdown clock for the new millennium, if he doesn't return on the first episode of Raw during the new year, I think that would be the biggest wasted opportunity. So I'm hoping he does, and I think they need it. All right, guys. Okay, it's J Spaniel 32. J Spaniel. Okay. I'm sorry. When you put a username and it's got a whole bunch of letters side by side, I don't know where you want me to separate it. So J Spaniel. I got you. All right, guys. I think I'm going to wrap up the live show right there. We've been talking for 2.5 hours. But the most important aspect of this live show not only was answering your questions and hanging out with you guys, I needed to get my feelings, my thoughts, my desires off my chest when it came to Stranger Things because I had a lot to say. I'm glad we got to talk about it together tonight. And it's over. It's over. It's finally over. 9 years, 5 seasons. It made me feel pretty nostalgic, man. I'm not going to lie to you. That final epilogue hit me right in the feels. And yes, it came at the end of somewhat of a clunky season, but more or less, I think it was fulfilling. And I think we got the ending that we needed and deserved, and it was somewhat bittersweet. So, with all that said, guys, I'll see you guys very soon in the next live show. Happy New Year. I hope 2026 kicks ass for everyone watching. And I hope it's much better than 2025 ever could be. As always, thanks for watching, thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you guys in the Upside Down. Because in my mind, it still exists somewhere, with L. Okay, John, have a good one. Okay, thank you too, man. Thank you, Jay Spaniel. Thanks, everyone watching. Have a good night. Thanks for watching, thanks for hanging out. And if you missed the last live show from a few days ago, definitely go check that out. It's only 3 hours long. What else do you have to do? Okay, I'll see you guys this weekend with a brand new live show talking about top 10 worst, top 10 best movies of 2025. Look out for that, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye. P.S. Did I mention I don't like girls?